Okay, if he raises his hand, you got to tell me because I can't see.
I can't see him yet.
Oh, here you go.
We're up.
I'd like to call to order the Avalon City Council meeting of June 18th. If we would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if we could just have a moment, we don't have a lot of details, but I'm sure most of you have heard that there was a helicopter crash on the west end of the island. They have found at least one person died at the scene, and I guess it's still under investigation, and maybe later Chief Krug could provide information when he gives his presentation. But just a moment of silence. Please be seated. And the roll call, please.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Here.
Councilmember Olson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cassidy. Here. Mayor Marshall.
Here. Our first order of business.
We have two presentations this evening. Well, one of them actually is like a general business item, but the first one is Salvador Zamora from the Tarzana Treatment Center.
Thank you very much. Please excuse, I'm a little bit under the weather. I caught that summer flu that is out there. But I want to thank the council and good afternoon. My name is Salvador Zamora.
And please, Salvador, I'm sorry to interrupt, but please talk into the microphone.
Yeah, I am from Tarzana Treatment Center. I have a small PowerPoint to be able to show you of the services that we have. We've been attending Avalon twice a week, and we have established a couple meetings, and we've spoken to some of the residents and the business establishments, spoke with mayor, also with the captain, and today we spoke with the judge of the services that we would be offering to the island. And after having these meetings with the residents and you know, the captain and the judge, they did disclose that there is a problem of substance abuse and alcohol. So it's very difficult for, if there's a patient in the island, to leave the island. So this is why, you know, they established, the county of Los Angeles established this pilot where we could be able to bring the services to the island. And here, this is, we were founded in 1972. These are we're a nonprofit corporation. Right now, the last time that we we checked, we have over 900 employees in 16 different locations in Los Angeles. We deal with county contracts, you know what I mean, Medicare, Medi-Cal, insurances, all the insurances that any patient would have, we would be able to service. Right now, as a matter of fact, we do have, we're giving services to 3 patients that we have here in the island. We're a joint commission accredited since 1987 under the hospitals, behavioral health, and also we are working on with the clinic here to be able to offer medical assistant treatment, you know, for those that are in need for opiate disorder or including alcohol. So that's a very a good tool that we have utilized, you know, in treatment to be able to help the patients that have opiate use disorder and alcohol abuse to be able to maintain a foundation in sobriety. This is 2017 individuals, as you can see, a substance use disorder. We also, of course, we have residential detox. You know, what the services that we would be offering to the island would be the minimum care, which would be outpatient. It would be face-to-face twice a week with the patients, and we're working on connecting with the clinic also with telehealth. So we would have individual sessions with the patients, through telehealth, twice or 3 times a week, depends on the care for the patient. This is the location that in Long Beach, which is outpatient, and we have residential. For example, if it would go through a referral or it would be a court order, I would assess the patient to see what level of care the patient would need, either if it's outpatient, which would be here, or if it's a higher level of care. We also have the residential services that you can see there, or detox. And if the patient would need detox, it's a higher level of care. Right after detox, they would be able to come back to the island, of course. We're also working on detox here in the island right now, but everything is just unfolding, and we're finding, what is that we need to do to be able to facilitate the patients and the residents here in the island. And we also deal with substance abuse occurring mental health disorder, but like for Tarzana here at the island, we will just be focusing with the substance use disorder, and the clinic we also have, they would be taking that part on the mental health. So we do have dual diagnosed for the patient. They usually come hand in hand with the substance use disorder and mental health. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. Yes, and this is just, Elizabeth passed out the flyers, also the services that we would be offering here in the island, bilingual services, so it wouldn't just be, English individuals and groups, it would also be bilingual. So that's of the population that I have spoken to, seem that there is a problem and they are looking for services, the program, like I said, there's a phone number of my card for referrals, and it would be a direct line to talk to me. And of course, as soon as I pick up the phone, there's confidentiality, and I would assess the patient right there and then and see what level of care the patient would need for either to come into outpatient or residential or so forth. This is the outpatient, similar to the ones that we have in Long Beach. It would be individual, group therapy, educational recovery, relapse prevention, the introduction to the 12-step philosophy, and also we would have some case management services once we establish more, like I said, once the pilot continues to grow into the island. Also, I know after speaking to some of the business and the captain and the fire chief, there's a problem with transportation if they would have to leave the island. Let's say if the patient would need a detox or residential, we would be able to be waiting on the other side to take them to the residential and detox and bring them back. So there's, like I said, more that we need to work together to be able to establish if we need to get the patient off the island, if that's what the level of care is needed for that certain patient. We talked about the medication assisted treatment. Probably by the beginning of July, we would have a solid answer if the island will be supplying the MAT services to be able to assist those that are in need of MAT services. Okay. Thank you.
I have
Yes.
a few questions. So what about interventions?
Intervention,
Family says, okay, Annie.
We would be able to, that is with the services. For example, if we have a patient, we're working with youth as well. If we have, working with a youth, of course, we are also doing, with the immediate family to have individual sessions as well.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that would come with the treatment.
Okay. And then when you talk about working with the judge, and I know he knows there's the problem as well. So let's say someone has a meth problem and they got busted for possession or whatever. So go something like he would say, okay, you could either go into treatment Or you go into treatment, and if you don't complete your treatment, then the law steps in?
Right. Well, right now, as for speaking to the judge, you know, I mean, he's going to establish some kind, because when he orders, it has to be like A and B. So we talked about how many months would I be servicing them, and I gave him, you know, 3 months to 6 months. So he has to come up with a format, a program that when he does run into the patients that need that, is exactly like you mentioned, that it's either, let's say you could call it like a joint suspension, right? If you don't do the program, then this is what you're going to do, you know what I mean? So that's something that we're working with the judge right now to see what is that we establish. But it's going to be, the program is going to be from 3 months to 6 months.
Right, okay. Okay, does anybody have questions?
No, but I'm wondering, could we get a copy of the handout, please?
Yes, of course. And also, like I said, I have the direct line on the card that would have my number. There's my mobile number that if I would need to assess a patient, you know, I would do it right there and then when he would call. Any more questions?
No. I don't have any questions from the audience. I just know I'm very thankful for Tarzana Treatment Center and the hospital and all these bodies getting together for the last 2 years, and Tarzana has kind of come up and made themselves available. We're thankful for the county for this pilot project, which the pilot project, as I understand, is for Medi-Cal eligible people. However, as he stated in the beginning, it's all folks. It could be insurance, private pay,
Correct.
whatever, so nobody's turned away.
Correct. No one's turned away. We would find Medi-Cal, MHLA, or whatever insurance they have, that we would be able to service them.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Ready to go, Mayor? Okay. Hi, I'm Bob Greenlaw, Director of Public Works. This evening I invited the Five Corners design team here tonight to present the 60% design elements on the Five Corners comprehensive pedestrian project, and we're seeking City Council and community input. So our agenda here, and it's going to take us about 20 minutes to present, and then we've saved 10 minutes for questions, so hopefully we can get done quicker than that, but that's what we've allotted for this. So we'll have introductions, background, talk about traffic design, then we'll talk about landscaping, hardscaping design, civil engineering design, what's next, and then we'll have that time for questions. So my team tonight that's with me, I have Michael Thomas of ESG. He's also our on-call engineering consultant and does a lot of engineering for the city, but he also is the project manager, directly responsible for the design of this project. And then we also have Steve Weinberger of W-Trans. He's our traffic engineer. Brian Hannigan of RRM, he's our landscape architect, and then also with us tonight is Jordan Monroe. He's in the back room working on the technology for us. So we're at the 60% design status, okay? So we've previously been to council once at the 30% design. We have been to a community meeting, and so which we shared all the 30% design concepts. We've been out with stakeholders such as the Island Company, Long Beach Unified, the Low Mod Housing on Tremont, the golf cart rental. So all of the stakeholders that would have input for the and also our city departments, such as the fire department, the harbor department, which moves floats to the intersection. The fire department moves, large vehicles through the intersection. So we're here to solicit and receive feedback, and that's important to receive feedback at this point because the 60% design is really when the geometrics we think are finalized. At least the alternatives are there in front of you and have been identified. And at this point, we try to move the project forward by adding more detail. So if And those details hinge on those geometrics and the basics of the geometrics. So we want to make sure that as we move forward that we have those geometrics nailed down and everybody's in agreement with them, because it becomes real costly at this point to make changes to something after we've added the details. So the project objectives, it's a complete street project. So in a complete street project, I remind you that all modes are given equal priority at the start of the project. And then the team attempts to find space for each of those to operate efficiently within a system. So that's what we're trying to do. So previous to this, back in the 1960s, the motor vehicle was king. And then all of a sudden, bikes and pads and everybody, they realize that there has to be a space for everything to operate within a system. And you see that in successful cities, when they have done a complete streets project, they'll have all of those modes operating efficiently. We want to create an off-harbor aesthetic place for community to enjoy. We want to improve parking and drainage. And one of the parking elements that we've added at the City Hall campus here is that you'll see within the design as we move forward in the slides here that we have created a parking lot right behind where the finance office is and adjacent to the storage room in that large landscape area. It's not that we're going to lose all of the landscaping, but we'll go more vertical with that landscaping and then we'll repurpose that space for parking. And that parking is for the city employees' use during the day, and then as city employees leave to go home, now we can use it for the park. So it's got multiple purposes. We wanted to provide new usable real estate for future Civic Center facilities. So we found a pad that's available behind the building here that could be used for other facilities. Okay, so that was a goal for the project as we were developing it. We were looking for opportunities. We've accommodated future environmentally friendly features like auto charging and also electrical vehicle charging, and that could be in the City Hall parking lot and also on Tremont Street, so that if the public had an electric vehicle, there would be a charging station along that roadway that you could charge your vehicle. We would like to accommodate the future Las Casitas development. So we were looking for where those access points and working with the island company on those, and then also in coordinating the utilities. And then moving the overhead utilities underground, so the power and the communication that are on the backside of the building here along Tremont, we want to get those all undergrounded, and that helps create usable real estate also, besides having a better aesthetic look. And then we also want to improve the wayfinding, and that was part of working with entities such as the hospital, so we can show, hey, the hospital's up the road, but also as there's visitors on the island and they come into this intersection and they can have better wayfinding signs. So it's part of the elements of this is to have the wayfinding signage. So a quick background. We received $1.74 million in MTA grant funds, and we had in the budget $485,000 in city matching funds. We're aggressively pursuing additional grant opportunities. We did apply for an active transportation program grant. We were ranked very high, but we didn't make the cut, so we hope that we do make the cut on this next time. And then the proposed development impact fees is another source of funding for this project. Work completed to date, we've completed traffic study, the drainage, geotechnical studies, field survey, and title searches. Realize that the whole project is within the city's right-of-way. We don't need to purchase any additional right-of-way for this project. We presented a 30% design to council, as I said before. The design development community workshop was held in October of 2018, and this is just, I want to show you the extent that we've had the outreach. It's been extensive outreach so far in this project. Also, the individual stakeholder meetings that I mentioned, I think everyone, Southern California Edison was another one, but everybody else I've mentioned already. Now the 60% plus design plans are complete, and our draft CEQA initial study is including all the studies that support that, and the mitigated negligence document is complete, and we have it on schedule to go to the Planning Commission for adoption on the August 2019 meeting. So at this time, what I'd like to do is bring Steve Weinberger up to talk about those traffic elements.
Thanks. Good evening, members of the council. Steve Weinberger with W-Trans. I'm a registered civil and traffic engineer, and I specialize in complete street traffic engineering, as Bob described. Also, I do a lot of safe routes to school work, and was the lead traffic engineer on the project. The study area, as you can see, the Five Corners intersection with Sumner, Tremont, Avalon Canyon Road, Country Club Drive. Some of these slides I'm going to show you, you probably have seen before when we were last here. I'm going to repeat some very quickly just for those who haven't seen it, so we can demonstrate how we got to where we are from a design standpoint. Currently, the intersection is extremely non-standard. Awkwardly configured is actually 3 intersections overlapped onto one another. The morning peak hour, 15-minute peak, if you expanded that 15-minute of activity for a full hour, the intersection would technically be operating a level service F. There's concerns over safety with all of the various movements, multi-movements from every direction. We put together this graphic which demonstrates the conflicts that can happen in the intersection given the various paths of travel by both pedestrians and vehicles. We have about 38 vehicle-to-vehicle conflict points and 28 vehicle-to-ped conflict points. Keep this graphic in mind as I move to the geometric solution, which is this. We did a concept design for this is a double mini roundabout, and why it's mini is because based on Federal Highway Administration guidelines for roundabout design, it is smaller than a standard roundabout. There are design guidelines for mini, and the number one difference you should keep in mind is the center island of mini roundabouts are fully mountable, so there's no landscaping. But we do have some ideas for beautification, which the next speaker will be talking about. So as you see, it's 2 roundabouts, counterclockwise flow, yield on entry. We've really reduced the path of travel and made it more predictable, a more predictable path of travel for vehicles coming through the intersection rather than the wide variety that occur now. You can see all the crosswalk locations. The blue is the sidewalk for the pedestrian that would be added. And then there's a few other elements that I'll cover in another graphic. So we did some analysis of and simulation of vehicle travel through the intersections just to make sure that it can accommodate at these size roundabouts. This is a standard passenger vehicle tracking through the various movements of the intersection. And this is not an auto ed size, this is a standard auto vehicle size. And as you can see, these vehicles can negotiate both intersections without having to use that center island. Next, we got to the larger vehicles, the city's largest fire vehicle, as well as we consider buses and other large vehicles that may travel through. This is the fire truck, and as you can see, that wheel tracking is using that center island, and that is expected, and that's why the mini roundabouts are designed with fully mountable islands. So when a fire engine comes through, they can complete the turn and just mount on top of the dome center island. That conflict point graphic that I showed you, this is the revised one with this design, only 7 vehicle-to-vehicle conflict points and about 12 pedestrian vehicle conflict points. And again, a more predictable path of travel for vehicles as they come through, and specific pedestrian crossing locations would be a low-speed environment, and just the design of the roundabouts controls the speeds of vehicles. We've now moved on to the 60% design, as Bob mentioned. This is our striping plan for the 2 mini roundabouts, and we've been working closely with Brian Hannigan from RM, who will come up next, who's been doing the pavement design, and he'll go through those features. So we've been kind of working hand in hand on that. I just want to point out to you the pavement arrows are going to be a critical part of information for the driver, since it's a counterclockwise one-way flow around the roundabout, and because the island is fully mountable, there's no signs on the center island, which you generally would see at a normal size roundabout. But there will be other signs to provide direction to the driver. Let's see. Okay, so this is the sort of full study area during the design. And if I can show you here, the project also includes a new parking lot here. And I think Brian after me will talk about that a little bit more. The project will also include new sidewalks along the east side of Avalon Canyon Road. And we'd be relocating the crosswalk to the park here, just north of the driveway right outside here at City Hall. But again, continuous sidewalks there. And then along Tremont Street, I can keep my arrow there. Both sides of the street on Tremont will have pedestrian sidewalks. And we're providing on-street parking on just one side. And we're working out details with the parking now, so we're trying to make them more flexible parking spaces that both standard vehicles and autoettes can use them as well. So that is the extent of the current design. And I'm going to move it on to...
May I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
You, just so I don't lose it. So bicycles. So bicycles will basically be driving with cars?
Yes. So the idea with the bicycles, and thanks for mentioning that, is because the vehicles are in a slow speed environment and slowing as they come through these intersections, they're traveling about the same speeds as cyclists. So cyclists... Cyclists can either travel on the shoulder or actually claim what's called claim the lane and become a vehicle traveling through. That's the standard design treatments for cyclists. If these were streets that had bike lanes, you wouldn't even you don't provide bike lanes within the center of the circle. So the idea is slow moving traffic. The cyclists are now at the same speed, and they're intermixing with traffic.
Okay. And then I just have another question, and I'm sorry, because on the parking on over here, access and egress for vehicles coming out of there, that would just be kind of like where the exit is now?
If you can see the arrow, the driveway access will be down here at the bottom for access into this parking lot, if you can see that arrow right there.
So that's a new entry point?
That'll be a new entry point. The existing entry point would close and move south, and you'd have that new sidewalk coming along that frontage.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. Move on now to Brian Hannigan. We'll talk about the landscape design and pavement.
Thank you, Steve. Brian Hannigan, good evening, with RRM Design Group. So I'll go over the landscape, the hardscape, and the lighting. This project was super exciting to be involved with, having two roundabouts and being able to come up with some ideas for that. So the rendering that you see up there is just a quick look at where landscape is, where the center ideas for the roundabout will be. This view gives you a better idea of how it will look when it's finished. This is looking down Tremont. Avalon Canyon would be to the left of this view. These are the pavement ideas that we have for the roundabout and the street and the crossings. We're going to use different colors to kind of help define pedestrian crossings and the striping, and then the circulation through the roundabout. And then the center of the roundabout, we are looking at doing a urchin design, a sea urchin shell design. And ironically, they are echinoderms, which is the family of like sea stars, so they have 5 sides to them, which just worked out really well with this project. So we're going to look at doing mosaics, a light in the center of it. It wouldn't be an obnoxious beam of light, but more of a glow that would come out the middle of the urchin, and give it a little bit of ambiance at night for the project area. This is a little bit cleaner view of the paving patterns that we're going to be using. The street leading into it will be, of course, asphalt, and then as we get into the crossings, it'll be the different pavers and the paver patterns. So in the center, we'll do the radial patterns, and then you can see the urchin designs there in the center.
Wow.
These are just some mosaics. They're very durable. I know there's concern about these being mountable roundabouts. They can take all sorts of traffic. We have done many of them in the middle of streets, so we're confident that they'll be able to take the abuse of any kind of vehicle going over them, but also they stay vivid in color, and there's just a whole variety of things that you can do with the color on those, so we feel it's going to be a really great artistic piece to it. These are just some of the landscape plants we'll be looking at. The idea was to bring some of the landscape elements from the Botanic Garden, and this kind of being the bookend of Avalon Canyon Road. It gives a great opportunity for some native plants and drought-tolerant plants, and we're going to be looking at making sure these are low water use. So we're bringing that element to it. And then also looking at keeping with the light design that's existing out there, but kind of upgrading it a little bit. It's kind of a nice, sort of funky looking light, and we feel that there's a better way to maybe make it more durable and keep that element. And then we'll have some bollard lights as well. We don't want to overlight the site. We want to keep the light levels down, and certainly not want to send too much light pollution up. So many of the lights are designed to shine down. And those are some of the elements, and I'll let Bob finish up. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're at the civil design piece of it. So I'm going to go over what this slide has on it and a few more things, and kind of circle back around to that complete street so I can show you how all the modes are going to work together. So up in the corner there, where I've got it pointing to where the box culvert. Now that looks like a crosswalk currently in the middle of the intersection that's concrete. It's not marked as a crosswalk, but somebody would think of it as a sidewalk. That's the box culvert. That's the drainage that goes underneath the roadway. So that's going to be removed and be replaced with 2 30-inch pipes. Okay, and so in doing that, we're going to give us the opportunity to lower the grade in the intersection, because we have that crazy cross slope there. It's like, a super elevation that would be on a racetrack. So that allows us to get it into more the realm of a 4% cross slope, which is what we need for that intersection to work with the mini roundabouts. And then we'll continue those pipes further on down the roadway so that we can capture where that space, that real estate where the open ditch is, and put that in some pipes. And then it'll reconnect to the open ditch back further by Clarissa, okay? So what that does, it allows us to capture that piece of real estate and repurpose that if we so desire as a community. We have accommodation for future vehicle charging. That'll be along Tremont for both golf carts and for electric vehicles. And then also in the parking lot, which you see, I'll flip back a few slides to show you clearer, but it shows that 16-space parking lot. And just imagine that whole piece of landscaping here has a new entrance point, which Steve pointed out, and so that we could, it's not a very good entrance point especially where our transit buses and everybody just comes out right and dumps right in the middle of the intersection. That was one of the goals, was to move that as far back as we could. When we did that, we went, aha, we got a parking lot, we need parking, we don't need all of the water use, all the landscaping. We can do the landscaping in a different mode. Okay, so then we have also a 20,000 square foot pad, and that would be that area where the buses are parked on now, and extend 160 feet to where the Las Casitas that the city owns there, the casitas there. So there's an approximately 50 to 60 foot wide by 160 foot, somewhere in there, however the math works out for the 20,000 feet. But that would be graded to street level. So there's an opportunity site for you that would be access right to the street. And it has all the utilities to it, and the city would own it. And then we'll have we're working with the utilities, so SCE, AT&T, and then also the cable, and they'll be moved and they'll be put underground, and that'll be the first phase of it. So if I flip back just quickly to a couple slides here, maybe I can go on this one to show you the parking lot. Now you can see the parking lot layout and the entrance and how all of the new pathways, so if you see kind of that speckled on the perimeter of it there, that's the new sidewalks, and so you can see how the sidewalks are. And it's important to point out that the pavers, the material that we're using, even though it's also very architecturally pleasing, aesthetically pleasing, it also is a material that here work crews on the island can replace as we had to replace utilities. We won't be cutting out a chunk of concrete, and we don't have hot mix asphalt. We can take up the pavers, do utility work, and then we have the skills to put those right back down. So we don't, have the death by 1,000 cuts in something that is truly artistic. And then it'll also have the colors, the different colors that Brian's designing in, so that it truly shows you where you can operate a vehicle or where you can be as a PED, but it doesn't have a sign. And that's important. We're not having, all the clutter of signs. We're trying to use those to a minimum. Okay? And then the other piece that I wanted to show you was, this is not very good representation, but just talk about the modes. Okay, so we talked about the bikes. We have slow speeds here, okay, so 20 or less. But as we go through this intersection, it'll actually be slower. And so when we design larger roundabouts, if we're getting 15 or 20 miles an hour, the most aggressive cyclists will be right in the roundabout. And they want to be seen, not on the edges of the roundabout. They want to be seen right in the middle of the roundabout, okay? Some of the younger cyclists, they could be on the larger pathways that are on the edge, and they're safe there. So there's plenty of places that to be slow traffic for the PEDs to be on the edge, the perimeters of this. The bikes can be in the center, or could be, the younger cyclists could be on the sidewalks themselves on the larger pathways. On the Tremont Street, they would, share the road. So you've seen those sharrows where you have actually bikes that look like arrows. And what that's telling the cyclists and the users there is that actually the bikes and the vehicles are going to operate in the same lane. And that's throughout communities. That's common design now. And so people understand that. We are building two transit stops. One transit stop is going to be right at Eucalyptus. So we're redoing the entrance to Eucalyptus. And so you can't see that on this picture here, but just think that the gate, we'll have a new gate there, and in half that space there'll be a transit shelter, so there'll be room to be able to get access in there, but we're repurposing that entrance so that we can pull off a transit stop there and actually have a bench there. And then the same thing, we'll relocate the transit stop and on Avalon Canyon a little bit further away from the intersection. So for the future, especially for the future, we're thinking as we repurpose this site, for other things, there's transit, and there'll be transit needs, so we're thinking of that. And then let's talk about the larger vehicles. So we talked about the fire trucks, and then the floats. They'll be able to go through the intersection. So all the modes are able to be accommodated in a system, in a place, and operate efficiently. And if we're successful, what you'll see, it's almost like a work of art, and that the whole system works so smoothly as you view it. As you view it in operation, that it works very nicely together. Okay, so let's go on the next step.
Bob, can I just ask you a quick question?
Yes.
Kind of a very low-level question,
Yeah.
but where would do you have an idea of where the buses would go, the current transportation buses?
Yes, so we want to relocate those up in the maintenance yard, and so we're carving out a space up there, because usually in a public works facility, they have right where they get maintained, they get fueled, they come out of there, and then that's, so
Got it.
it's
Okay.
more efficient for them. And that's a pretty expensive piece of real estate back there, just to be housing transit vehicles. Okay, so remaining work and schedule. So this is definitely, you can see the note up there, dependent on funding and project phasing. But summer of 2019, we're going to post and certify the mitigated neg deck document, so the environmental document. Going to complete the detailed civil and landscape architectural design, so what we're working on now, and then we'll move into 90% and then 100%. And the next thing that you would see from us, unless you request it, would be plan approval. So that's why we're requesting input now. And it doesn't have to be tonight, but within the very near future. So take some time. If there's anybody in the community or anybody on council that wants to meet one-on-one to get more info or dig into a detail, we're there. That's what the intent of this, that's what the intent of the community workshop was. We didn't get great participation on that, but so that's what we're out here seeking, that info. So it doesn't end tonight, but just soon we need to have the concept so we can move on. And then address the right-of-way issues. Like I said, the city owns all of the right-of-way, but there are encroachments in our right-of-way, especially on the north side of Tremont. So we're going to have sidewalks on both sides of the roadway that are 5 foot wide. And so there will be some adjustments on some of those properties there, and it won't be a raw edge adjustment, but we'll be working with those owners to adjust some of those encroachments that they have within the city right-of-way, okay? Fall 2019, coordination and finalize the utilities, and working with the Catalina Island Company, with anything that they need with frontage, so that they always have the ability to develop their property in the future, so we don't want to have any constraints on that. And we'll be pursuing funding opportunities, like I said before, the ATP, and then also if the DIF is approved, that's another source of funding. And it actually supports, if there's development here, that actually is needed to be able to support that project. Winter of 2019-20, advertise award construction contract, and realize that in the construction, we're going to have utility work first. And you'll see utility work happen, and once that gets finished, then we'll actually bid and award the construction contract. And then in around 2021, we'd complete the project. The project, we're developing the plans, the total plans for all of it, but it can be phased, okay? And we're developing the documents as such that all the estimates come off per page. So it's very easy to say, what if we chop it here? What if we chop it there? But we still need to meet the goals of the Metro Grant App, which is the pedestrian improvements. Okay, so that's the minimum goal we need to meet, at least with the first phase. Hopefully we're successful in getting all the funding and can complete the whole project at once. So we're ready for questions.
I always have them.
Okay.
So, number one, on Tremont, when you say you're going to get those 2 30-inch pipes or whatever, and you're going to run them down, would that mean that they are going to be flush to the ground
Yes, they'll be in Tremont underneath the roadway.
No, so when it comes down here, back here, are you cutting down that rock wall will be gone and everything will be level?
Yes, the rock wall will be gone.
And it'll be level to the street.
That's correct.
Okay. Another
Yes.
thing, was there a discussion on solar with the lighting? Just out there, just put it out there.
Yeah, we can see if that's the most efficient approach. If not, then we also can look at where photovoltaic field would be, whether it be on the roof, you need to supply the power, or whether it's on the individual lights, So one way or another, that's part of, we talked about that at budget time, the energy efficiency project,
Okay. And the charging would be, they would pay for the charging, or would we be providing that? Or what were you envisioning?
Well, I don't think that we would give anything for free, or at least that, but it would be available, okay? And I guess if you decided to give it to subsidize that, it could be, but otherwise I think that the standard of the industry right now, if you go over there, you have an electric vehicle, there is something you can put a credit card in, just like a parking meter, okay?
Okay.
As far as some of the golf cart charging, that's something where there's some communities that do have that, and that we can explore that further, and whether that gets charged or whether it's just somehow we have a flat fee to be able to do that.
And then my question is about parking. You give more parking and more people park. I mean, it would be nice if our city employees would walk to work, not meaning to pick on city employees, but, they can ride their bikes and things. And it's kind of like if now we're going to let them park and maybe charge on Tremont, and then we'll park in them here. And then if we have a community center over there, and the pool and whatever happens in the future, what's the advantage of having parking right there?
So
I guess?
it wasn't just employee parking, and hopefully we can get everybody on bikes and peds, and city employees should be the first ones to do it, right? But it also is for the city vehicles, so to stage some of the city vehicles. So that's why we wanted to take everything out of this front parking lot, and that would be our main public parking lot. And now we can stage the electric vehicle, the golf carts. And so that was the intent. That's the first thing. And then hopefully the few extra spaces could be for city employees that needed to come to work in the vehicle for one reason or another. Okay. But we just saw it as an opportunity that could help, especially as it comes at night and you use it as part of the parking for the park.
Okay.
Are we losing any part of the street, of the width-wise, on Tremont, with the sidewalks going in? And how far are the sidewalks going to go down Tremont?
Okay, so the sidewalks will go on both sides of the road, correct, all the way to Clemente. I think we're actually expanding the roadway to be able to get a little bit of parking, because we got plenty of easement on the south side to come toward the City Hall campus. Okay, so as far as the north side, we're just at the absolute minimum without taking buildings or, it's like but at least there may be some fences moved, there may be some landscaping to be able to get a sidewalk along that side, because I just don't see people, visitors coming over and wanting to walk on one side of the road, especially if this area gets developed. They're going to want to walk on the side of the street that they are, and they are families, and that's what we're seeing right now is they're spilling out into the roadway. And to keep them safe, we want to put them on a sidewalk.
Okay, so how far is that going down then, the sidewalk? All the way, is it going down to Catalina Street?
It's going to go down 50 feet on each leg.
Inside?
Yeah, so as we go down to the waterfront, the improvements would go about 50 feet to be able to conform into the existing roadways there. But otherwise, from Sumner and Tremont, the intersection there, all the way to Clemente, there's going to be sidewalks on both sides of the road. There is an existing sidewalk on Avalon Canyon, and we're going to put a sidewalk to match up all the way to the golf course on this side of the roadway. So there'll be a five-foot sidewalk on this side of the roadway, and a new improved crosswalk that goes over to the park.
And the transit stop is in front of Eucalyptus Street?
Yes.
So it'll be kind of dug in.
Yeah, there's
there.
plenty of room out there in Eucalyptus,
Right.
and when you look at it,
Right. No,
you come in, I can show you detailed plans.
No,
Anybody-
I'm not arguing.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about how well it's going to be used. But
I had that question even from Audra. There was there was comments that we don't use that now much, but if we build a community center, if we have other future development here, think of the need, so what it is for the future. And you always can say, oh, we're just going to repurpose that area. And but once we're building curb and gutter, we want to be able to have all the modes to be able to operate efficiently in their own space. And that would be able to accommodate anybody that wanted to come. If there was a new community center right here, they could be right there with a transit stop.
So the one complaint I got with the stop sign being further back because of the driveway where the buses come out, are we going to move that stop sign forward a little bit?
So now it's going to have a yield sign.
A yield sign.
All entries are going to be yield to circulating traffic. That's how roundabouts work. So the traffic circulating, when you comfortably feel you have a gap, That's when you
There
enter.
you go.
That's a
Okay.
gap acceptance. Yeah, and so,
Okay.
Councilman?
Sounds exciting.
Any community members have any immediate comments? Yes, somebody's in the back. Christine? Come in forward.
Good evening. My name is Siria Bastida, and I have lived on this beautiful island for 28 years. Excuse for my English. I hope you can understand me. At this time, I would like to take a moment to give thanks to two people in particular.
Wait, excuse me. Are you
Sorry.
speaking in regards to what we just
No.
presented? Okay, that's what this is. These
Okay.
are public comments on this project.
sorry.
No, that's okay.
Let me know when I can.
Okay, Ms. Bastida, thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
okay, we do, on our website, have this available to us, okay? So get on the website, you'll see everything that we built up, our 30% or 60%. So as we've built along the way, so cityofavalon.com, I think it's /5 5-way project. So if you get on there, please do. And then also, we invite you to come in and talk to us one-on-one. I want to share the project. I want the community to know what their project is, okay? So, but do that soon so that we can keep on moving. Thank you.
This has been a lot of work. When you lay out all of the different things that have gone into this project, it's monumental.
Yeah, it's a major
So thank
project.
you for all the work
Okay, thank you.
that everybody's done. Yes, and Jordan too. Okay, if we could take a moment, we would like to go to the Avalon Municipal Hospital Board meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
I would like to call to order the Avalon Municipal.
Oh, you adjourned it? Okay, thank you. So now we're going back to announcements and written communications.
I have none of those.
Okay, department head reports.
Okay, Bob Greenlaw, Director of Public Works again. So I've got the info I sent out to City Council through Mike Palmer. I'll go over that just so the community hears it too. Pebbly Beach Lift Station is the agenda item tonight, and same with Five Corners pedestrian project, so they'll find the update in those. Casino Way restrooms, the restrooms are nearly complete. We're putting toilet seats on and partitions, so they should be open by July 4th weekend, so they'll be open very soon. New fuel float, we're doing the final hookup with the fuel line. We had to make some slight modifications once we saw how much it was moving there, so we made some modification material. But all the elements are there and it's been tested, and once that we get that fuel line in within the next week or so when the material finally gets here, it should be in order and ready to go. Wastewater treatment plant office, it's nearing completion. We are hooking up the electrical right now. We anticipate by the end of June, early July, that it will be functioning as an office for them. The South Beach seawall improvements, I discussed that last council meeting, but we're working on finishing up getting the permits over. The permits are finished, the plans are finished. We're getting the permits to the agency, so the Coastal Commission, Army Corps of Engineers, and all the required agencies, and that we'd be looking in the fall to make repairs to the seawall. You saw that today we were out there actually doing interim repairs to the railing on the top of the seawall. That will be replaced with a permanent railing, but and then we'll repurpose that material that we use there today. And so that was just so that it was safer and more aesthetically pleasing for the rest of the visitor season. The Pebbly Beach road revetment repairs, that's same as the South Beach seawall. The plans are done. We're working to get the permits through the permit agencies, and then that's, again, in the fall that we would be doing that work. Mole Phase 1, we have put our contract through for form through our attorney's office, and we're working this week with Metro to get the final authorization to get it out and get the contract executed, because that's a step that we have to do with the federal funding. Any questions?
I have two quick ones. Have you, I don't know if you look at the Vaughn's, the survey, the traffic survey, the circulation survey, are you guys looking to see if people are responding to that?
Jordan would be able to answer it, and I'll
Okay.
inquire.
I'm
that
just
and bring
curious
it
if
back.
people are actually
Yeah.
participating. Okay, okay.
And then
that-
one of the things that we want to do as we get down to July is we want to be making sure that we're taking photos so that we're capturing those data points. Because the photos are, worth a lot in themselves, because you can just take a few quick photos and you can provide the day at certain times. And then you can show what that looks, and I can give you examples when we do share that. This is July 2nd and
Yeah.
midday, and this is what it looks like, versus just saying, we had 85% of the spaces parked, then, then we can reflect on that and we decide what other, modifications that we need. And then soon, as you see, we're putting in the last ramp in the intersection, you'll see the crosswalks, the median go in, and then we'll see what that does with everything too.
And that's actually my second question is, I think I understand what's happening at the one intersection on the corner of Beacon and Sumner, closest to the senior
Okay.
center. Is the step that's there, I'm assuming that you are going to put a
There's going to be a
full-time
rail,
gate,
there's going to be
a
an
rail?
architectural rail, so I'm
Is-
working with Brian Hannigan here. So there'll be a good-looking rail on 3 ramps. They'll
But-
be on those 2 corners, and then also that mid-block ramp, so that we don't have the ability for somebody just to step off that, okay?
Is that the way that it is because it's coming down one hill and then you have to be able to go around to the ramp?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
only way we could make it ADA compliant, and so that's what the intent was, is there needs to be an accessible ramp, but then we also didn't want to block or narrow down the path of travel for all the other users, so we figured, hey, we can just put the ramp in the parkway, so that makes it accessible. The sidewalk is the same as it is at this point, so you can just step off the curb if you're any other user, or you could decide to walk, 10 feet around and get down the ramp if you have a stroller or you're helping somebody that's disabled, okay? So that's the best we could make of that to make it ADA compliant, and it's very important that we do make it ADA compliant, because there's folks out there that are forcing us to do that.
I had said that I thought it was because you're coming down from that hill,
Yes.
but then I figured I better ask
Yes, it
before I
is,
started saying
and
that.
the hill just keeps on going up, and then we only can do a 1 in 12, so an 8.33%, and the hill itself is like a 9.5% grade, so there's no way that I could achieve to make all the ramp come together and be where there was no guard fence coming up there.
Great.
So no speed bumps coming down that street, right? Down Beacon there,
You want speed?
on the sidewalk.
It should look real good when we get done.
It'll be beautiful.
And it'll start making sense when I do get the rails up.
Okay. If Jordan did want to interject something, because he came out of the office,
I think he was going to give some
Probably about
statistics on the
the
number of
parking
people.
survey.
are you okay? Okay, thanks, Jordan.
Good evening, Council. The Harbor Department, just to let you know, last weekend we had 282 boats come over. We had Delray Yacht Club came in with about 15 to 20 boats. And we also had a poker run, like a Go Fast. There must have been about 40 of these Go Fasts that came over. In fact, one of them had an issue at about 3 miles out where his outdrive pierced the back of his engine, and it was taking on water. And Baywatch, between Baywatch, our harbor personnel, myself, and the assistant harbor master, were able to get that boat into the hoist and be able to lift it out of the water and put it on a trailer. Caleb came down and brought in a trailer, so that was a great job done by everybody. And that boat was about, the owner said it was a $50,000 boat. So that was kind of a good save there. We did put the fuel dock float in. It's there. We're trying to get some hoses. I guess the hoses we originally had probably wasn't going to work because of all the movement of that dock and with the surge and all. So hopefully they got the flexible hoses coming in. And and Friday the 21st, we have 12 people, community members, going through a hoist class out at the mall. We have a instruction here in the council chambers, and then they all go out there and learn how to operate the hoist. We started a program here last year that if you don't have your card, you don't get to use the hoist. As simple as that. So we brought in, Caleb's crew, we brought in Mark's crew, we brought in anybody that was going to use the hoist that had to have the instruction on being able to use the hoist. And we've set the hoist up in a way that they have to call the harbor department to turn the hoist on. They can no longer just jump the fence and hit the button. We can do it from our phones or our computer. At least we know who's operating the hoist. So if there's any damage, we can always go back to it. So a busy weekend. We got lucky with, or unlucky with the weather, but obviously the weather helped us out at the Isthmus on the fire, and I'm sure Chief Craig will go over the Isthmus fire, but the humidity and the overcast really, really paid a good deal. So any questions?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City staff. Just very briefly, we had two significant incidents that were both mutual aid responses over the past few days. The Mayor, you spoke briefly about the aircraft, private helicopter that went down sometime yesterday. It was reported overdue, and an investigation and a search was began. That was located about 9 a.m. this morning. Sheriff Air 5 rescue helicopter got over on scene down toward the west peak of the west end of the island. Single fatality, and LASD, NTSB, FAA, and the coroner's office are conducting that investigation.
So there was only one person for sure?
Correct. Well,
okay.
That's what I've been told.
Okay.
We also had a small brush fire on Saturday evening down at the Isthmus, just below the Banning House. It was contained at about 1 acre. That was also a mutual aid response with County Fire. That the cause and origin investigation is also ongoing with that. Unless you have anything else.
No, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good. Fire season is upon us.
And congratulations to Christian.
Yes.
And congratulations to
congratulations
Christian.
to firefighter Christian Cisneros, who's going to make the leap from the super rewarding position of code enforcement officer to entry-level firefighter. So we're super happy for him. He's earned it. And how about I bring him to a council meeting and I'll introduce him.
Great.
That'd be great.
Terrific.
Matt Baker, speaking on behalf of the Finance Department. Just wanted to provide a quick update on the audit. Last week we did receive draft fund financials. We're expecting the full draft of the CAFR by hopefully the end of this week, and we'll be back sometime in July with a final product to share with you. Other than that, I'll be speaking on the budget tonight, but if there are any other questions, that's all the update I have.
Well, just a reminder that you are the finance director.
I am the finance director.
Okay, thanks.
So thank you.
Amanda Cook for the Planning Department. Just a couple of quick things. Zangray and the Atwater are proceeding along at a brisk pace. Unfortunately, I can't give you a firm opening date, but it's probably not going to be before the 4th of July. The Hotel Villa Portofino and the restaurant are going to be starting their renovations in the restaurant portion in the next couple of weeks, so you'll see that happening this summer. We are almost ready to submit our sea level rise vulnerability report to the Coastal Commission for their review. This is part of the work that we're doing for our grant for the Coastal Commission for our LCP update. So we're hoping to see that report go out to the Coastal Commission next week. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
I have kind of a question comment, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So we see that the carts for Vons have started their process where they won't go very far. And unfortunately, I became witness to an accident that happened in the middle of the street where somebody was taking, an elderly person was taking their groceries, and the cart locked up, and so the groceries in the cart was in the street. Very good Samaritan helped to pick up everything and give her a ride. So I guess I'm just a little bit concerned about how, if I know we want cart containment, I understand that, and I get that, but how do we communicate that the members of the public that are visiting, or to our?
I guess we could we could ask Bonds to put up a sign, please be aware these carts can't be pushed away from the property, so that when people have their groceries in them, they know that they can no longer take the carts.
There are signs in the cart.
There's signs on the carts. See, I always use the little hand basket, so I hadn't noticed.
No.
Oh, okay.
I know, but they're forcing them down onto the sidewalks.
Yeah, it was just really, it was my first experience knowing that the cart containment had happened, and it was just, I mean, my heart went out to this lady and thought, is there anything we should do?
But if it's on the cart, I guess this person, and we could have them, which I don't think is there now, actually paint a yellow line where the containment line is.
Right.
So you'll be more aware of how far you can take the cart.
Yeah, it won't go past. Yeah.
You'll know as you come up on that line, hey, this is going to be
that's a good idea
spot.
too.
So I'll reach out to Bonds and suggest that.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
Councilman, did you have a comment? Okay.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Theme for the 4th of July parade, and we're just 2 weeks and 2 days out. Making of the Magic Isle yesterday, today, and tomorrow, celebrating 100 years of Wrigley's on Catalina. Here to announce we have our grand marshals for the parade. It'll be Allison Ruzak and Blaney Haganoff, which we're pleased to have as part of the celebration. Also want to formally invite you to ride along on the Avalon fire truck. Council members and family will be meeting at 12:15 at the fire department for load-in for that. I'll get an email just with the specifics with regards to that. If we can get this meeting wrapped up in the next 20 minutes, we can make the last half of bingo, first night of bingo on the beach tonight, from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. It'll run Tuesdays and Thursdays, again, starting tonight on South Beach. Tomorrow, from 7 to 9, will be our first day of the kids' fishing derby. Weekly on Wednesdays off at the end of the Green Pier. Staff will be there, breaking kids down into two age groups. Most fish caught, biggest fish caught prizes, as well as the most unusual fish for the two age groups. Our youth day camp program started yesterday. We had 26, which is a great number for our first day, and then we had 31 today. It's 9 to 3. Starts across the street with a drive up to JMF via the bus. They spend a couple hours there with some field games, come down to the park for some activities. Real traditional this year, a lot more campy with songs and crafts, and just with the leadership change this year. So the feedback for the first couple of days has been really good. Sunday, June 30th, will be our first concert, a concert of three. It's a concert in a park series that we're hosting, sponsored by ESG Engineering. Mr. Baker is here a little bit earlier as one of your consultants, but with a generous donation, we're calling it the local edition. We've got two bands for each of the concerts, one in June, one in July, and one in August. Just across the street from 4 to 7 o'clock, a couple of them on a Sunday afternoon, one on a Saturday afternoon, kind of trying to bring some of the traffic off of Front Street and just real kind of family-friendly here at the park with barbecuing. Last couple of prime timers, we have our next event on next Thursday, so 26. We're doing pottery and lunch with Robin. So pottery making. It's from 10:30 to 12:30. Contact us at City Hall for more information on that. And then lastly, our floats went into the water. The inflatables went into the water on Friday. We had a mutual effort with the county lifeguards this year. We got into the schools. We were able to do some talks to some of the kids as they were coming down to their beach days. And then with some staffing from 12 to 4, 1 to 5 each day with recreation staff. We're trying to get a real good handle on it early on. I do have to report we've got our first suspended child for a couple-week period of time, and you could probably guess who it is, bringing baby oil out to it. But it's something that we're not going to tolerate this year. We're going to try and get on it real early this year and That was it for the Recreation Department.
And, thank you, because I was getting off the boat and I heard him on the bullhorn, and telling him, hey, and they really are getting trying to keep a handle on that. So thank you for all of your efforts.
On it early. Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I appreciate that the staff is going to be spending some time out there too, because I had thought we were going to give it a year or so to try it and then possibly add to it. And I'd love to maybe next year's budget look for some funding to add a couple pieces to it. And it's hard to do that if it's, if not everybody's following the rules. So I appreciate the fact that there are consequences for the bad behavior out there, and hopefully that will help remedy.
Yeah, thank you. Staff will be meeting with the lifeguards Thursday morning at 8 o'clock just to kind of go over the first week and just making sure we're staying consistent with how we're enforcing that.
Oh, and just one other question. Is there going to be anything going on at Casino Dock on the evening of the 4th of July for the fireworks?
So we will be, like last year's, be barbecuing out there, and then we'll have music early afternoon into the early evening at the fuel dock there. Yes.
Okay, so tickets will be on sale, or people show up?
No tickets. It'll be Ivan running food out there, like it's done the last couple of years. We tried that 2 years ago. Last year it was just a barbecue and come up, and then music going from, I think it's 2:30 to about 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Excuse me, and if you have a question, Val, you need to come up to the mic.
Just what I tell Dan, Wednesday is the 26th.
I'm sorry, it is Wednesday. It's off of golf.
Yes, that's correct.
It's on Wednesday, the painting and tile day. Okay, thank you, Val. Okay.
Captain John Hawking is on the mainland. He'll be on the 545 boat this evening. He was at court today. So.
Okay. City manager?
Just have a couple of quick things. This weekend, our Thursday, Friday, and part of Saturday, Gateway City's COG is coming over. And I know a couple of the council will be attending and some city staff intermittently. And we're excited to have them back. This is their second year. Did I steal your thunder, Cindy? I'm sorry. I'm just reporting that I'm attending.
Yay!
Okay. The other thing is last week we had a kickoff, a water conservation drought contingency plan group met as part of USBR was here. We had some major stakeholders, city staff, and Edison, and so I'll reporting back on the progress of that group. And the last thing is today Michael Palmer and myself met up with Townsend. They were in town, so we met with them to go over some of our grants and any potential ones for the future.
City Attorney?
I have nothing tonight.
Okay. Council member reports?
I will be attending the Gateway Cities retreat happening here on the island Thursday through Saturday morning. That's all I have.
I attended the California League of Cities committee meetings last week in beautiful Sacramento. When I got there, it was 103. Oh, yeah. I brought some paperwork back that I'll have given to the city clerk to distribute to you guys to talk about exciting legislation that's coming down the pike.
Okay. You're good?
Yeah, I just got one thing. I just want to make sure that with the holidays coming up, that there's a lot of construction going around town. And a lot of people are walking in the streets and stuff's blocked off. And 4th of July week, I'd like to see if we can get the message out to some of the contractors and people that are working. So maybe they could button up things a little tighter up before that weekend starts and make it safe for everybody to get by. Because people are all over the place right now and they're coming early because it might be during the week. So if we can get the word out to some of the contractors and maybe everybody involved, make it a safer place for everybody to be, if we can get the word out, that would be nice. That's it.
I met with Eric and Anna Karen from the group today as well, and it wasn't anything heavy that was discussed. It was just like couple of the grants that are going forward and that kind of thing, the $100,000, and then and the tanks that you already had reported on it at the fuel dock. So that was about that. It was just nice to see them. And Jim Luciano, you going to speak today? Were you going to come up and say anything?
In the public comments?
Yes? Okay, then I'll wait. Okay. That's it. So oral communication, this is an opportunity for members of the community to speak on items that are not on the agenda. You will be limited to 3 minutes and no action will be taken.
Well, now I'm dying to know what you want to ask me. Do you want to ask me first, or?
No, you go ahead.
Some of you may have already received in your mailboxes our annual 4th of July fundraising letters. They're in the process of being delivered. If you have not already, look for those, please. And in partnership with the city and SMG Consulting, my long anticipated and discussed community and business sentiment survey has actually finally gone live, so that's on our website. And we're doing both an email campaign and there will be a postcard box holder mailing very shortly, encouraging every member of the community, please, to participate in that. The survey is available in both English and Spanish. And if you can't find it anywhere else or you don't remember, just go to our website and under the search bar type survey. It'll take you to the first item. I've been contacted by a couple of our members in the last few days with concern on the visitor counts continuing to wane, and we've had discussion about the various reasons that could be. From one of those conversations, and JJ, I'm not trying to blindside you, I'll gladly follow up with you, but one of those conversations inspired a thought today that maybe it would be appropriate for us to do some outreach to yacht clubs again. A couple of years ago, we were invited, a member of the Harbor Department and I went and did a presentation at one of the yacht clubs in Dana Point, and we thought that the decline in private boaters this year might be worth doing some specific outreach to further them along. So I'm open to that and happy to work on that. And that's what I had in my notes, so I'm curious what you want to ask me.
Oh, no. But I've been thinking of calling you and whatever, but since you're here. We have a number of businesses that have opened in the last year and are continued to open, so I would hope we would, even if it's a one day, that we just go around and cut red ribbons all over town.
And if you and I want to just do it on our own, I have been soliciting from those various businesses to schedule something and then reach out to you, and I'm not having a lot of luck. And if you can imagine getting a business open with summer looming, I totally empathize why those businesses are in that mode, and I'm a disturbance more than a benefit probably in asking that, but we can certainly do it guerrilla style. I'm very happy to do that.
Okay, yeah, that would, okay. We'll talk about how we can do that guerrilla style. That would be kind of fun.
Yeah,
okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor, Councilman,
Great.
staff. This comes in a form of reminder. The last time I remember Pam Albers was here, and she made a comment, or she made a request of the Harbor Department and the, I think it was the street maintenance, to have a maintenance schedule. She was looking to see if they had a maintenance schedule, and or they could get a hold of one or make one up. And I thought it was a good idea, just because maintenance is a big problem here in the harbor. And I noticed that the Yacht Club and the Tuna Club had already they already did their piling work this winter when the tide was really good. They put a lot of pilings underneath there. So their docks and everything are pretty secure. Well, I don't want you to lose, with all the stuff going on in South Beach and the Mole and everything, I don't want you to lose track that green pier out there in the middle of the bay out there is a big moneymaker. But it has to be maintained. So keep an eye, towards that, to maintain that, because there's a lot of action on that. It needs a lot of love right now. And I'm just saying this just to poke you in the ribs and let you know it's still there and it does need attention. Anyway, that's all I got to say.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. Now you come up. Bastida.
Good evening. My name is Siria Bastida, and I have lived on this beautiful island for 28 years. Excuse me for my English. I hope you can understand me. At this time, I would like to take a moment to give thanks to two people in particular. There are many people I am thankful for in this life that I have been fortunate to encounter on our island. I want to now take a moment to recognize and give thanks to Dr. Ulibarri and Mrs. Linda Riften. Dr. Olivari has been my doctor at the time I most needed medical attention. She formed a team to help me overcome my illness. During this time where I have daily appointments at the clinic to support my health and to overcome my illness. Otherwise, I will have to go overtown for service, which I will not have been able to do financially or because of my work. Dr. Olivari took the time to call me to check on me through the weeks of care to make sure I was okay. Also, when my mom was sick, she did the same for her, calling to make sure she was okay. We have a great doctor in our community. She knows our needs. She is an islander like all of us here, caring for us like a family. We deserve in her going another great doctor to nurture us the same way here at our clinic. Dr. Warren is great. Joy, nurse practitioner, is great also. That we need doctors, not nurse practitioners only. Please, Dr. Olivari, come back to visit and work in the clinic or ER as you can. I hope this invitation extends with the hospital like it does with us in the community. Yeah, well done, Dr. Olivari. Thank you. The second person I want to acknowledge is Linda Riften. This island has evolved to make educated young people that are serving our community near or far. The young people are full and have great understanding of the islanders' needs. She is committed to us and our children's success, even that she has her own husband, children, and business to care. Linda embraced all of us in the community with the same care. Linda has given our children opportunity to get educated, to learn skills, to build a better future. She does this by working alongside with our children, showing us what we need so they can do it on their own. If we need help, she assists us by showing us, not by doing for us, which allow us to be independent, strong, and live in our potentials as parents and for our children. Linda doesn't ask for money from those who need her help. She asks to pay it forward to our community, families, and the institutions that invested in us. I am a living testimony of a mother whose daughter went through her program and successfully graduated from college. When I went to Chicago and saw my daughter in her office working, I was so proud and happy. I am a mother of one of many mothers that gives thanks today to Linda Riften, believing, giving, and caring for our children to have a better future. Thank you very much, Linda. And thank you to Lara Orozco, social worker of the hospital, for helping me translate this letter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
We need to hear a lot more of those kinds of things at these council meetings. Thank you. That was wonderful.
Beautiful.
Hello, Paul Birchall, Avalon Library. Yes, education. I'm just piggybacking on that. We're in the middle of our summer discovery program. I think I've mentioned it the last two meetings. Reading over the summer. Let's read. I just got a big pile of new free books to give away. Stop by the library, sign up for the summer discovery program. I've got so many books, I don't know what to do with them. And I can't circulate them. I can't put them on the shelf and circulate them, but I can give them to people to take away. So come and take advantage of the summer discovery program. I wanted to talk about, if you've read the last month's issue of Library Journal, and of course you did, LA County Library was named the top library in the country. Avalon Library, as tiny as it is part of LA County Library. So we share in that award. And because of it, we're going to throw a little party on the 26th. All LA County libraries are, so we're going to do it too. In my little room. So come and join us on the 26th. We'll have some refreshments provided by the Friends of the Library. They don't know about that yet, but they're going to do it. And yes, it should be fun. We've got some free books and lots of other stuff as well. That's going to be on the 26th. Coming up on the 21st, we have an appearance by the magician California Joe. He's going to do a wonderful magic show. On the 29th, I've got the storyteller McKinto. I think I've mentioned these to you before. They're going to be wonderful. Today we had our Avalon History Talk with Chuck Liddell. He liked it so much he has put me up to do something really cool in July to celebrate National Summer Learning Day. We are going to have an Avalon History Trivia Bingo game. Where we'll have bingo cards and we'll pull numbers for the bingo. But in order to put your little thing on the card, you have to answer a trivia question. And if you get it, you get to bingo. And if not, you have to keep playing forever. We're going to continue with our Thursday and Saturday art pop-ups. That's every Thursday and Saturday at 3:30. Coming up, a couple other things just randomly. Towards the end of July, I'm going to do a Halloween in July party with a one-man show by Duffy Hudson. He's going to perform Edgar Allan Poe. That's going to be very enjoyable, I think. Let's see. I think that's all I got for you right now. We still have knitting on Saturdays. We still have our Spanish language circle Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday with Ms. Suzanne. Okay. Yeah, come join us. Come find us at the library.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Anyone else?
We've got ukuleles.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot the ukuleles again.
Okay,
Sorry
we're good.
about that.
We're good. Okay, thank you. Okay. Now we'll move on to the consent calendar.
We have 7 items on the consent calendar this evening. The first one is actions from June 4th, 2019 City Council meeting. Second one is to adopt a resolution notifying the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors of the city's desire to receive specified law enforcement services from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office and authorizing the expenditure of COPS grant funds and authorize the city manager to execute the city-county municipal law enforcement services agreement for fiscal year 1920, and that is a 5-year contract. 3 is to adopt a resolution acknowledging the City of Avalon's approval of the amended Joint Powers Agreement forming the California Transit Systems Joint Powers Authority and authorizing the city manager to sign the amended agreement. 4 is to adopt a resolution designating several staff members, which is the administrative analyst, public works director, or the city manager, as authorized agents for matters relating to the State of California Management Agency for State Disaster Assistance. 5 is to authorize the city manager to renew the taxi voucher program operated by Catalina Transportation Services in an amount not to exceed $96,000, or that's 1,200 books for the fiscal year 1920. 6 is the outlines were attached to the resolution to provide direction. Well, you know what? I'm going to word that differently. We just want to adopt the resolution for a lottery selection system in the event that more applications for the sidewalk vending permits, roaming sidewalk vending permits, are received than are available for permits, because you've already gone through all those and provided the direction in the resolution. 7 is to authorize additional funds from the Sewer Capital Reserve Fund, account number 108506521, for the Pebbly Beach Road Lift Station Rehabilitation Project construction contract, and to increase the not to exceed contract amount the city manager is authorized to execute based on the additional funds authorized. You were provided by Mr. Greenlaw, I believe, yesterday. It was the bid summary, and there was 3 options. Staff is recommending the base bid and bid alternate 2 for a total of $660,155, and that is to Jordal Construction. And if you have any questions, if you wanted to do something with that item, Bob Greenlaw can answer those questions.
Council, what's your pleasure?
I would like to pull item number 2, and I have a very quick question. I don't need to pull it, but a quick question for Dan on item number 6.
Okay. So do we want a motion on the others? Or do you just want to ask your item number 2 question real quick?
I vaguely remember Councilmember Olson asking to put that no new applications received until 2020? Did we ultimately decide to do that, or did?
So what is in here, we are going to, what's being proposed is that we go through the applications we have through the last meeting, and then anything thereafter, we had a submittal, actually the next day, would just drop down to the very bottom of the list. So whether it's January
Okay.
1st or it happens, day after, the June 4th meeting, they just go to the bottom of the list.
Okay.
So that's what's being proposed.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, and I just have one on the waiting list. It says, with all low-income applicants being placed on the list before non-low-income applicants. Why are we even allowing non-low-income applicants to stay on the list?
Oh, you have to, if there, you, under state law, if there are not enough applicants and you've got 5 low income and an open space and you've got 1 person that's not low income, we have to fill that slot.
Because we gave priority.
Okay.
You get priority, but you cannot
Perfect. Okay.
disallow it based on income.
Good. Okay.
Move staff from 1 to 7, excluding 2.
Yeah, thank you.
I second it.
Okay. Call for the vote.
All ayes. Okay, so item number 2 is the Law Enforcement Services Agreement with Los Angeles County. And over the last 7 years, the contract has increased 25%. And this year over last year, it appears as though the contract has increased 7%. And I just would like to get some explanation as to, I don't believe our actual services has changed, but in 8 years, a 25% increase in service fee seems really high.
The only thing that they keep saying to us, Cindy, is because of the liability section of it. So the contract is divided into 2 sections. There's the cost of the services, which is broken down to, I'm sorry, I'm looking for my numbers here, $97,000, and then the liability trust fund allocation is increased by $17,119. And I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the contract section of the LA County Sheriffs came over and they did a quick presentation here to explain why and how the formula they use for that. And unfortunately, we are grouped in because we contract out to them, and it's not necessarily based on the size of our city. If you'd like us to have them come back, Cindy, I certainly can ask them to come and speak on the raising cost.
I would, because it is split out on the additional information that that you guys gave to us, that the liability percent of services has increased 11%, which the percent increase on the cost of services alone has increased 7%. So I understand that, yes, our liability trust fund has gone up $17,000. That's pretty obvious with a lot of the lawsuits and unfortunate circumstances that are all over LA County, don't necessarily affect us, but because we are a part of that fund. But I am wanting to have further explanation. 7% increase on services is more than standard cost of service increase per year. That's like almost triple, so.
Okay, I'll ask them to come.
Okay, so I don't know that we're sort of stuck in a position here. I mean, we have to continue services, so it's not as if we can. I mean, you can't really pull it and hold it over. So I feel a little bit of a pickle there.
You could authorize the execution of the agreement with the condition that at the next council meeting, Captain Hawking explain the increase.
Sure.
I mean, but do we agree with the increase as well? So I guess that's where I'm kind of feeling like, to me, going from a contract in 2012 of 1.1 million to a contract for this year at 1.5 million, that's $400,000. That's a pretty significant increase over these years. So I just want to make sure that we're paying attention to what's happening with this contract and the services that we're getting, and agree to the allocation of those services. And I know we get a lot more. I understand all that, but I guess,
I would
and
prefer
I may
to
just
have-
be one vote that's not comfortable with it, so I appreciate that as well, but I do want it publicly known that I've got some concerns with
Totally
the
understand.
dollars.
Sure.
I would prefer not to just have Captain Hawking, because, you know, he has to get all his information from the mainland.
Right.
I would like the gentleman in Contract Services Department to come over and speak. So I don't know if I can get him here for the next meeting, but it's the most, the closest meeting I can
And
get to.
in all fairness, obviously it's part of the public record, but I'm sorry, item number 2, is it?
Yeah.
It is called out that the members of the Community Advisory Committee requested to find out what the cost would be for adding an additional deputy to provide security at the Cabrillo Mole. This was not specifically just for the Cabrillo Mole. This was a year-round addition to the Sheriff's Department that would transition from the Mole in the busiest summer months to being a school liaison officer during the school year. So that was not in the staff report. That I just want members of the public to know. And also, it was a request to get the data. It wasn't a request to add it. It was,
No.
would this be something that the Community Advisory Committee would even want to bring to the City Council? So this was a little premature.
Yeah.
On
I
this part.
received that information at a staff meeting, so
Sure.
I wanted to know if I'm getting direction to do that, and so when that contract gentleman comes from the mainland, we can ask that question also.
Well, I don't know what relief factor means, but on this master plan, it says deputy sheriff, non-relief, $277,340.
So, no. Okay.
It's an expensive contract.
Yeah, yeah. And I think at some point we should sit down and have another one of those meetings like we did a while back where we just talk about expectations and that kind of thing, and maybe we could do some of that there or before the meeting, because I think there's just things that we probably should just discuss with them, like who they hire and the type of people they hire and that kind of thing, that sometimes we might get a little, anyway. So are we going to approve the budget and then have them come, or not approve the budget?
Do you want, I could bring this back at the next meeting after having a conversation. Are you agree to it for 1 year if the county agrees to that, so we can have a sit down?
Council, what's your pleasure? Because how many years was this going to be?
This is for 5 years.
For 5 years.
With no increase? No.
Oh, what did it say the increase would be every year, or it's
Because every year we come back and there's always an increase.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My only question is, I noticed on the quote it says that it's a sheriff deputy non-relief code 310, and then when you look at the next couple pages down, that code, there's actually a special code 324 for a Catalina deputy, and it's a little cheaper, so I was wondering why the 5 deputies are coded as one when there's a Catalina deputy designation.
I'm not the be-all, end-all knowledgeable person on the contract, but I do want to say that we receive far more services from the department than we actually pay for, such as the detectives and jailers and things like that. But
When you look at that master rate sheet, there's actually a code that says Catalina deputy. It's also a non-relief, and I'm just wondering why there's a code for a Catalina deputy and we're not using it. We're using the other deputy. That's a little more. So, it's just.
oh, I see, $20,000 less.
Yeah, that's.
It's a good question. I missed that.
Thank you. Okay, so.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to not have services, and I don't want to create a concern specifically, but.
Part of your, part of the contract is for, designated for deputies that work in the city. And there is a deputy that is supposedly, some of the contract is for the county area, the area outside of the city.
That's not our
And-
Not our contract.
And is that what you're talking about?
No. No, I'm just saying the overall expense of the contract has increased 25% in 8 years. And I just, even if you did 2 or 2.5% cost of living increase per year, that's, maybe 18% increase, but over last year, 7% increase of service. I'm questioning what that 7%. Is it that new benefits have been given? Is it that we're receiving additional services? What is the reason for such a high increase in the contract?
Well, I agree with your comments and your request.
Yeah, great. Okay, so is there a motion to approve it for 1 year and then chat with them?
If you wanted to hold this, John Hawkins said he was coming up here after the vote. If you had-
But does John know the nuts and bolts?
I can't say, Annie, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just giving you that option.
I don't know, what do you guys think? What does the rest of the council think?
I don't want to pull out of town on July 1st.
Well, I'm sure that's not gonna happen, but.
Does the existing contract have a holdover clause?
I don't know, Lee. I do know that when I received this and they were saying they wanted us to renew it, I went back into the contract and they were supposed to have notified us way before, 2 weeks before it would be a deadline.
Yeah, so I'm sure they're not going to pull out.
No, but also, if the contract is approved for this, it's approved. We can't go back and renegotiate it. So that's one of the awkward things about having these at this moment with.
Yeah, the contract for this year appears to be the boilerplate that they've used, and there is no holdover provision. However, it does require 9 months' notice and meet and confer about the price and stuff like that. And so,
and that never
I would argue that if that didn't happen, that they cannot just walk out. They've not exercised and acted in good faith on the contract.
So let's not put the captain on, let's just hold it over.
I would rather hold it over because in that case, and I'm going to say at least in the 5 years that I've been in this seat, I've never been involved in conferring and discussing a contract before it came before council. So if it were a 2% increase, I would not have questioned it, but 7% there is, in my opinion, significant enough to question.
Okay. All right. Holding over
Thank
item
you.
2. Welcome. Hi, Amanda.
Wait, where are we?
Right.
Oh.
Are you done with that item? I just wanted to ask for a clarification on item number 4 on the consent. I'm sorry, I kind of spaced and you guys voted for it. It's the one where you're designating which city staff is going to be able to speak and sign for the city in the disaster situation.
Right.
The city administrative analyst is on there, which is great and wonderful, but the city actually has 3 administrative analysts.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you want to actually include all 3 of them, that any one of the 3 can be this person, then maybe you want to clarify that or clarify which department, which administrative analyst
I can answer this.
Okay.
So the resolution is generic in a sense for the reason that staff members change, the city manager can leave, the public works director can leave, the administrative analyst. And after we adopt the resolution, the letter goes to the agency and it will specify in the letter it is this administrative analyst, and we'd be giving the name, this public works director and the name, and then the city manager and the name. That way when those positions change, it's a matter of us just changing it in a letter form and not the resolution coming to council.
So currently,
I apologize. Go ahead.
Well, currently, which administrative analyst? Because we obviously know the public.
Because Jordan is the one that has been securing all these funds for us and deals with our emergencies.
And that's great. I think that clarifies it. It doesn't say.
Right.
It doesn't affect your ability to change the personnel once that happens. Okay, thank you.
Great. Good point.
Good catch.
Okay.
Mayor, I'd like to ask if we could go over the budget before we do the development impact fees.
Okay.
Let's get through the big
Is it time for a 2-minute break?
Yeah.
No.
Well, I have 2 minutes. I don't know about you, Cindy, but put on the timer that he's got his watch going.
We need to do development.
We're back.
Yes, sir.
Or are we already on? Okay. All right.
Matt Baker, Finance Director, to present what is our third of our study sessions for the fiscal year 20 budget. My goal for the presentation is to kind of go at a high-level overview of the changes we made to the structure of the budget. We talked about this during the study sessions last week, but I want to take this opportunity to discuss with the public the changes we made and our goals and the thought process behind those changes. I'm going to go at a high-level overview the fund structure of the city's funds and a high-level overview of the revenues and operating expenditures, as well as go into the details as changes we made out of the study sessions from last week. And then at the very end, turn it over if there are further questions on any of the items in the budget, or if there's further discussion on any of the next steps for this.
Our binder, this is different than our binder. Should we be following in the binder, or should we just follow this?
You can follow in the binder. The order is the same. The numbers have changed slightly based on the discussions we had last week. So the numbers won't necessarily line up exactly in the budget, the binder that was prepared. But I'll go over in detail what those changes are, as well as their dollar amount impact.
Okay.
So again, we really, in putting together the budget this year, we really had two overarching goals. One was transparency. We really wanted to increase the reader's understanding of how the city spends the taxpayers' money. So how we attempted to do that was by breaking it out with narrative sections to accompany the fund activity, to give an overview of the sources of revenues that go into a particular fund and where those monies are spent. So it's a little easier for the public to pick up the document and not necessarily go into the pages with all the numbers, but still be able to read a short narrative and get a better understanding of the nature of the activity. We also tried to do some more summary tables in this budget to try to make it a little easier to get through all those numbers. And then the second piece of it really then is on accountability of the city. We wanted to make it clear for everyone to understand how we spend the money, so it's easier then to hold us accountable to how we spend it. And a component of that is the budget and fiscal policies that we've added to this budget for the first time. Again, I view this budget as a work in progress, in that I hope in future iterations we'll be able to more refine how it's presented. So over the course of not only tonight, but over the course of the year, if there are elements to the budget that you would like to see explained differently or in more detail, I do welcome that feedback, because it's, I think it's a document that we can continue to improve upon. So just to provide a brief overview of the process, we actually start working on the budget back in December. A lot of that work was implementing the new OpenGov tool, which allowed department heads more independence in constructing their budgets, so finance didn't necessarily have to be in the room working with them as they develop that. We also start looking at our estimates in March and April. So we're projecting out where we are going to finish fiscal year 19, and then based on that information, then estimating what we think the future is going to look like in fiscal year 20 as far as revenue estimates. You'll also see in this budget a much more detailed CIP plan, which I'll go into more detail. We've reviewed this internally several times as a department head level, and then we had the 2 study sessions last week where we've incorporated some of the feedback from that in the version of the budget that was published for this council meeting. Again, there are a few minor changes from the binders that we had previously presented, and we'll go over those. And then ultimately the goal would be to adopt this budget before the start of the next fiscal year. So if not tonight, the goal would be to adopt a budget before June 30th. So again, the overview of the budget, why we structured it this way is we really wanted it to mirror more how the financials present fund activity. So that way when the reader is looking at our audited financials, they have more familiarity with how the fund structure is at the city. So we kind of break it down by the major operating funds. So the general fund is kind of what you think of when you think of a city. That is where public safety is charged, planning, recreation, so forth. Special revenue funds, what those are is those are funds where the revenues or the monies coming in must be spent on particular purposes. So for example, we get gas tax money that must be spent on street improvement. So we have a street fund to manage those funds. Going down, harbor funds relatively self-explanatory, but we did also provide additional clarification in this year's budget, breaking it down by harbor departments, whether that's administration, harbor public works, or harbor operations. Other enterprise funds just means business funds. So those are funds where you would expect the charges for the services to pay for the services that are provided. Examples for that at the city would be the sewer fund, the saltwater, solid waste, as well as Avalon Transit. Again, we'll go into more detail on the CIP plan and the investment and budget policies. Those are new things we've incorporated into this budget to try to provide more information to the public of how the city is spending its funds. One of the things I do want to call attention to, because it is a significant change in a lot of the accounts from where we previously budgeted, we really looked at, as part of the budget process, our internal service allocations. What an internal service allocation is that's, say, for example, the finance doesn't just work for one particular department. We do payroll, we do AP for harbor activities, for sewer activities, et cetera. And so the internal service is how we charge all these different funds, or if you want to think of them this way, all these different businesses for the services that finance is providing. We really wanted to make sure there is a documented rationale behind the allocations. Some of the things we found in reviewing prior allocations didn't necessarily line up. For example, our insurance fund is an internal service fund, but we were charging the law enforcement department for some of our general liability costs, whereas our general liability coverage isn't covered under the city's insurance, but it's covered under the sheriff's contract. And so it wouldn't necessarily make sense for them to also pick up a portion of the general liability insurance. So we did look at our allocations as part of this budget, and we have made updates to it, which we believe better reflect the true value that these funds are receiving from the internal service funds. These are just some of the updates on the revenue side to the budget, based on some of the feedback and reviewing numbers through May. So again, for something like TOT, the month of April's TOT wouldn't be due till the end of May. So I did, in the past week and a half, go back and look at revenues received in May to try to see where we're at with our estimates. We did increase our TOT revenues by $100,000, which would represent a 2.8 increase on our fiscal year 19 estimate. Again, what I've provided to council tonight is a draft of our tourism-driven revenues. Right now we're on track, is even if May and June were down approximately 7%, we still should hit our fiscal year 19 estimate. So I do believe that we should be, if anything, on the conservative side with those numbers for TOT. Similarly, we did increase ad tax from the version that you previously received. We increased it by $20,000, which represents a 1.5% increase on where we estimate 19. So if I were to take it as a whole, where we're looking at from an operating revenue standpoint is we think revenues are going to be relatively flat, with slight increases largely attributable to just inflation. So as hotel prices potentially go up, the city would see additional revenues even if the same number of hotel rooms were rented in 19 versus 20. We also did look at recreation revenues. We looked at where the numbers were for fiscal year 19 and then adjusted for 3%, as a lot of those fees did increase as part of the rates that were adopted last council. So expenditures, the first one on the list isn't a change to the budget, it's just a change to the estimate. We contribute every year to our landfill trust fund, and it was just an oversight on my part. I didn't have anything in our 19 estimate. So I've corrected that for the contribution that's made this year. We did look at our part-time hours for recreation aides and leaders, and we reduced them from the version of the budget you received on June 7th. So it's in line with the estimates of prior budget. So from a hour standpoint, there isn't necessarily any increase in part-time rec. It would just be in, if there's any pay increases with them, any increase in total dollar and part-time there. We did reduce part-time hours based on the budget that was initially presented to you on the 7th, but part-time harbor patrol hours do have an overall increase of 745 hours compared to fiscal year 19's budget. The advantage of having additional hours in part-time is used before we go and use overtime for full-time employees. So there is some advantage to having additional flexibility in the part-time hours in patrol. Another thing that was added was we did add the Harbor Department of Boating and Waterways loan payments to the budget. Again, that was an oversight on the version that was shared with you on the 7th. Those loans date back to the late 80s, and I believe a lot of it was for some of the rehab and construction on the mole. So we're back here. There's 2 loans remaining. One of them will be paid off in this payment with another $50,000 a year loan for another couple years on that. We did increase harbor insurance by $10,000, and the reason for that is we got the actual bill in last week, so we were able to update our estimate based on the new numbers that were provided. And lastly, we did increase our other legal fees. So this would be in addition to the legal retainer of BBK. This would be when we hire outside attorneys on active litigation matters. Just a couple of changes to the capital improvement schedule that was previously presented. We did remove the mooring project and budgeted it as harbor maintenance based on feedback on Tuesday's meeting. We also did add a dog park project and budgeted it for fiscal year 2022. The advantage and the goal of the CIP plan is when there are known projects, even if we aren't necessarily going to have funds available that year for them, we do want to incorporate them in the document in the list. So as funds do become available, or if land were to become available, we do have the ability to shift projects forward. So we did add it to make sure that it doesn't fall off the list. And then we also did update some pictures and descriptions from the prior drafts based on feedback we did receive. So again, this is just a comparison of the legal fees by fund and department. Talking with Scott today, we might be actually under our 19 budgeted amount. And so that's part of the justification for reducing the amount for fiscal year 20.
Yeah, I think you're going to be substantially under that. I went through the bills, and unless all hell breaks loose the next 2 weeks, you're substantially under this amount.
And again, when we're building the estimates, we're doing this process in April, and in some cases earlier. So we do try to be conservative when we come up with the number. So knock on wood, everything comes out. So what schedule you have here, this is the updated fund balance schedule. So for the public reading this, the first piece of it are the governmental funds, and so that's the general fund and the special revenue funds. And I know it's too small to read, so you might have to print out a copy. But the first section of it are the general operations that you think of when you think of a government: public safety, planning, recreation. The middle section is what we call our enterprise funds, and you can think of those funds like a business. And so that would be the harbor, the sewer, saltwater, solid waste, again with the rationale being that those funds pay for their operating costs by charges to the users of those activities. And then lastly, the bucket at the bottom is the internal service funds, and so that is how the city charges all these various businesses for the services that are shared amongst multiple funds. So finance was the example I gave earlier. Another example would be our garage. Our garage services both harbor boats, public works vehicles, sewer equipment, et cetera. And so that's how we're able to charge those funds for the benefits they receive. So these are the operating revenues in the general fund. The reason I want to show this slide is to give a better sense of what those estimates mean when I say a modest 2% increase in general fund revenues. Across the board, that's generally the philosophy we had when putting together the revenue estimates. We did look at current year. We considered the weather and its impact on tourism. We looked at state reports for statewide tourism, and we thought that a modest 2% growth, really driven by inflation, was a reasonable estimate. Like I said, I would love to come back to you guys at mid-year and say I was way conservative, and we're looking even stronger. So hopefully I have a busy summer that can prove me wrong. But I do feel confident that. Sorry, Ollie.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt, but sales tax is up a little bit, but the hospital portion is down a little bit.
That's an oversight on my part. But the hospital tax is matching its revenue, so it really has no impact overall on the fund balance. So whatever amount we have for hospital revenues is, and I think that it's the 19 estimate that likely needs to be adjusted downward. Our sales tax estimate did come in below where we had initially budgeted. Again, we work with a sales tax consultant that helps us come up with the estimate for the sales tax piece. But the hospital is a budget neutral, if you will, item in that all of the tax we get coming in goes directly then to the hospital, and there's no net impact on the fund balance. So again, this is an overview of the operating expenditures as well as the full-time equivalent employees in the general fund. The general fund is the largest fund of the city from a expenditure standpoint. What an FTE is a full-time equivalent. So when we try to compare year over year how many employees we have, we base it on a full-time schedule, so 2,080 hours, and so that's what I mean when I say full-time equivalents. Fire only has 10 firefighters, but because their regular schedule has more than 2080 hours in a year, that's why there are 13 there. Again, you can see fire department and law enforcement make up approximately half of the operating expenditures in the general fund, with the remainder split between our public works crew. Public works has time charged to the general fund as well as to the harbor fund for all the work they do maintaining the facilities down on Front Street and in the harbor. Non-major funds, those are like they sound, relatively from a revenue or expenditure standpoint, not as significant as other funds. A lot of them are trust funds where we receive donations. The majority of activity in the non-major funds relates to our administration of the successor agency. And so the 1.5 employees you see there would be a portion of the finance director's time, a portion of the city manager's time. And that was included as part of the successor agency ROPS budget adoption process. And so that's where those numbers came from. So to move on next to the Harbor Fund and the Harbor Fund operating revenues. Again, for these, we're just looking at the operating revenues. The Harbor does allocate a portion of the cross-channel wharfage to harbor capital activities, and so I have taken those monies out of the schedules to just look at harbor operating fund activity. The cross-channel wharfage, as you can see, we're budgeting it to be relatively flat to the current year, with, again, modest increases of 2 to 3% for the various activities down. Looking at my estimates, I may have been slightly high on my harbor service charges, but I think my estimates were slightly low on harbor use fees and ad tax, so I do think the estimates looking at the May data this week are going to be fairly close. And again, the wharfage does make up 1/3 of our operating revenues, and if you group the wharfage for the cruise ships, it's almost half. And the cruise ship is increasing the fee from $3.50 per passenger to $4 beginning in July. So next we have a breakdown of the operating expenditures in the Harbor Fund. As you can see, we have some Harbor Works full-time Harbor Works, Public Works employees allocated to the Harbor Fund's Public Works Department. Major contracts that also fall within there is our contract for lifeguard and paramedic services, and I want to say it's approximately $750,000 of that $1,200. Other contracts would include our restroom maintenance contract as well as our waterfront trash pickup contract there in Public Works. Administration would be the Harbor Master, Assistant Harbor Master, senior admin's time, and that's largely labor driving the operating costs in that department. Operations would be our full-time dedicated harbor maintenance staff as well as harbor patrol. As you can see, labor is a major portion of harbor operations. In addition, in the maintenance and operations, that's largely the utilities for the harbor. The harbor does get charged for its sewer saltwater access as well as gas, electricity, water, fresh water. And lastly, just draw attention to the operations contract services. That is our shoreboat service, and that amount is offset in that we do receive some harbor use fee revenues for that service as well. But that is the contract amount. So moving on next to the other enterprise funds. So these would be our sewer, saltwater, solid waste, and Avalon Transit. You will see changes to the salaries and benefits in the sewer and saltwater in a decrease, and the reason for that was rather than charge admin's time directly to those funds, we are recouping that cost as part of the internal service allocation. So some of the increase you see in internal service allocation is because we're shifting labor costs from directly charging it to recouping it through the internal service. And again, that's really the purpose of having the internal service, is so that you don't have to divide up admin's time or finance's time directly to those funds. Major contracts would be for our managing our wastewater treatment process, and so that is charged primarily to the sewer, but also to the saltwater fund, and so that's what the amounts you see in contract service primarily relate to. And again, our solid waste contract is really what's driving a lot of the costs in the solid waste fund contract service section. Lastly, Avalon Transit. We do receive local return funds that fund a lot of the costs to operate our land transit system. However, there are some costs associated with that contract that aren't covered by local return funds, and so those costs are found in the contract services in this account, as well as our taxi subsidy program is a contract service operating expenditure in this account here. We do allocate a portion of city employees' time to the fund, and as that's an NTD requirement, and so that's the rationale for that. And we do have an admin analyst who spends a considerable amount of time on transit-related matters. So lastly, the internal service funds. I pulled the general administration fund here to call out in detail because that is the largest of our internal service activities. We do have an insurance fund that we treat as an internal service fund, as well as the vehicle maintenance or the garage fund that benefits multiple funds. Again, you're going to see, if you compare to prior year's budgets, increase in admin, and a lot of that's driven from, rather than splitting their time and directly charging enterprise funds, we're using the allocation process to make those charges. And just to call out, in the contract services and general government, that would also include the IT contract services that the city receives, as well as accounting and auditing services. So for example, Davis Farr would, our current city auditors would fall under contract services and general government. And the amount in the elected also relates to training and travel costs for our elected officials, as well as approximately $5,000 related to membership dues that the city benefits from as a whole as well. So again, not to go into detail on every capital project. If there are projects that we want to specifically discuss, myself, Mike, or Bob would be happy to. But I did want to kind of provide just a brief overview of what the CIP plan looks like and the rationale for it, so members of the public can get more familiar with the document. Again, it's a document that I believe will continue to evolve as we progress through our CIP plan. So if there are improvements you would like to see as far as information, we have taken some feedback, and we're looking to link the CIP plan to kind of the source information of what drove these documents. So for example, we had a recreation master plan that was adopted this year, and a lot of the CIP projects in recreation were driven from that master plan document. And so we're looking to better align all those kind of planning documents with the CIP plan, so it's easier for the reader to see how the projects were identified and the rationale for those projects. So again, different from prior year budgets, you're going to see the current year capital budget amount, which is really the only information we've previously included in prior budgets. But what you're now also going to see is a timetable for construction or completion. You're going to see a classification of project expenditures, so you're going to see how much of the cost is related to design versus actual construction. You're also going to see financing sources, so if there is grant funding, we want that to be identified in the CIP plan. And to tie into the discussion that's going to follow, we're also looking to incorporate development impact fees into the CIP plan, so we can see and better track how we're spending those DIF monies. Lastly, and this is part of the document that we're going to have to continue to evolve and work on, but what we'd like to be able to show is estimates for anticipated maintenance and operating costs. So if we are planning on constructing new buildings. We want to provide you guys with an estimate of what it's going to cost to operate those buildings from a maintenance standpoint, utilities, if there's additional staffing needs to run a front desk, for example, of a rec center or something like that. So it's really not complete in this version of the CIP plan that we're providing, but it is where we're trying to get to with this document, is to where you can look at a project, see how it's broken down, and also see what the future needs will be for those projects. So again, not to go into detail, but we do have a summary schedule where we break down the projects in our CIP plan by project and fund. We have a highlighted column for the amount to be spent in the current fiscal year, as well as the total project costs, total amount in grant funding identified, and the net cost to the city. Again, not to spend too much time, and I know this is small for the reader at home, so I encourage to download a copy of the budget. But we do have some general information in the upper left corner, a picture of the location of the project or a picture of the equipment if it's an equipment purchase. In the middle section is where you're going to see a breakdown between design, construction, as well as if there's any budgeted contingency in the CIP plan. And then lastly, there on the bottom is where you're going to see any revenues identified, as well as any anticipated operating costs to maintain those documents. So again, this is kind of the first phase of where we see our CIP plan. We want to continue to build on it, not just at the budget time, but throughout the year, to just enhance the descriptions and enhance the connection to the source documents with it. And the last thing I wanted to touch on before I turn it over to questions is we did create a budget and fiscal policy. And again, that goes back to our goal of increased accountability. What that document does is it explicitly provides the authority to administer the budget. It outlines the principles behind what we consider when we set up the budget. And it also establishes certain controls that the city staff will have to follow with regards to any modifications to the adopted budget. So in conclusion, if I were to summarize the budget in one slide, what we have is we have operating expenditures outpacing our revenue growth. You really have to look at each fund differently, but in certain funds, we still are generating operating revenues, whereas others, there's drawings on fund balance just to cover operating expenditures. So we do have and we have presented a balanced budget, but again, how we are balancing the budget is by drawing on those fund balances. Fund balances that do exist partially as a safety reserve for the city, but they also do exist to be spent on city projects as deemed necessary. So again, we just want to be mindful of how we're spending those funds if we are drawing on fund balance to pay for any operating costs or projects. And lastly, really, we need to start seriously looking at additional revenue opportunities or changes to current service levels to mitigate further draws on fund balance. And I just want to draw attention to the sewer and saltwater fund being the highest priority. Mm-hmm. Currently, the operating revenues in the sewer fund are really just covering our operating costs. And these major capital outlays are having to be funded almost entirely by draws on fund balance. And the sewer and saltwater funds don't have the fund balance to continue to do this in future budgets. So if you look at the schedule at the beginning, the major CIP projects we have for the Pebbly Beach lift station largely draws the remaining fund balance in the sewer fund. And so we will be coming back in July to discuss additional revenue generating opportunities in those funds in particular, but as well to discuss in general opportunities for the city to look at new revenue sources. Wow. And so with that concludes my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any additional questions that may be out there regarding the budget.
I've heard it twice. I know. I think it's wonderful, and I think if you folks out there probably could understand it, it's pretty good.
I do want to say thank you for.
And he didn't take a breath the whole time.
I'm trying to get this. I said 15, 20 minutes. I tried to make that. So
how long did it take?
We're going to say 15, 20 minutes.
Just said 30?
I do want to say, though, that I very much appreciated you incorporating all of my questions that I had after our first budget study session. And I also want to say that this is the easiest, most well put together budget I have seen. This is the fifth one. And I just went right through this, and it was fantastic. So
Yeah.
thank you for everybody's hard work, because I know it wasn't just you, but
It was
everybody's
definitely a
hard
team
work.
effort, and
That being said,
It was a
fund
labor
balance
of love.
equals reserves.
I understand that. I understand
But
that.
at the last meeting where you weren't there, we said we're going to schedule a meeting to
Yep.
talk about, just like you said, new money and new things like that.
And
So-
we said before the end of July.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, so that'll be coming.
And then, the plan is also, regardless of whether this gets adopted tonight or not, is to provide a mid-year budget update. And I'm also trying to improve upon prior budget updates. And we do have the ability to make adjustments throughout the year as changes to revenues or expenditures occur. But this, reflects kind of where we feel we stand as a city right now.
Right. I mean, like sometime in September, October, right? I mean, it would be good to,
We definitely could come back and at least provide an update on how the summer revenues looked as
Right,
far as,
yeah.
as budget estimates.
that would be good. Okay. Is there any comments from the?
Yoli.
Oh, Yoli? Come.
Thanks. Yoli Montana Hotel Metropole. I just wanted to say that we were audited this year with the new company, and that they were wonderful, and that it was just so refreshing to have conversations and with them prior to them showing up and getting all the information to us that they will need. And so when they came, it was just seamless. And I just wanted to thank you for that, and I hope that they will continue with us, because it made our lives a lot easier.
Great.
And I actually learned a lot of stuff as well
Yeah.
that we didn't know, because you just kind of go through the motions with, numbers. And so I asked a lot of questions, and they had a lot of nice answers. Thank you.
Nice to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that was referencing our hotel TOT audits,
Mhm.
which we're actually looking to finalize hopefully this month, and invoice any additional actions that comes out of it. There's been a couple of hotels that we're going back and forth and working with, and that's contributed to some of the delay. They did come out in late January, but we're hoping to have that wrapped up soon, just as kind of an aside.
Thank you. Unless there's other comments, we'll call for a motion.
I move the resolution of the City Council of the City of Avalon adopting the budget for fiscal year 2019-2020.
Okay, is there a second?
Second it.
Okay. No further comment. Call for the vote.
All eyes.
Okay. Bob? That be Bob?
Mr. Palmer is going to be doing this.
Oh, too. Oh, you're going to do that. Oh, and Captain Hawking is here, so do we, if you, Captain, if you had anything you wanted to share with us? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. First of all, I apologize for being late. I was on the 5:45 boat and just got here. Did anybody talk about the helicopter
Yes.
crash? They already did?
Yes.
That was
Yeah.
the main thing that we had today was that.
Yes, no, that's.
That was all I had.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you
Welcome
very
home.
much.
Uh-huh. Okay. What?
You want to tell John the question about the different codes? Counting
No.
that- He'll get it.
No.
He's gonna go through this.
Okay, Mike.
Hi, Mike Palmer, Assistant City Manager. I'm here to talk about item number 8, which is the development impact fee discussion. Just to give everybody just a very quick overview, because I don't want to keep honing in on some of the background on this, but just for the public's refresher, development impact fees, we've been talking about this since about 2017 when council authorized city staff to enter an agreement with Michael Baker International. And I actually have a consultant here, Dino Serafini, who is with Michael Baker International in the audience as well. He's the public finance analyst and the primary person who's really worked with staff in putting the report together. So just for a brief overview, development impact fees, these are really fees that are charged by local government. And they kind of offset to pay for expansions of city infrastructure and services needed to accommodate growth. These fees are set aside in designated funds and used for identified projects in the broader community. Things like public goods and services such as parks, capital improvement, transportation, fire, and police services. These were authorized back in 1987, really with the establishment of the California Mitigation Fee Act, which was Assembly Bill 1600, and AB 1600 really kind of established statewide procedure for exacting these fees from development projects. There's certain things in order to adopt these fees that cities must do. They need to identify the purpose of the fee. They need to look at and identify the use of fee revenues, determine reasonable relationship between the fee's use and need and the type of development paying the fee, and then determine a reasonable relationship between the amount of the fee and the cost of the facility attributed to the development paying the fee. And so all of these projects that the city identified in this report came from either the capital improvement plan, it came from the general plan, the Parks and Rec master plan, the city berthing plan, which is the mooring plan that we had done a few years ago. And so all of those were kind of put in to look at future growth beyond there. And so we were looking at this. When we last were before you, this was back in April, there was a workshop that staff had conducted to get some further discussion. Following that meeting, staff was notified that while we were originally proposing 9 different fee categories, 2 of those were actually not really technically development impact fees. They were actually capacity fees. And so capacity charges are imposed on new or upsized connections to water or sewer systems. These pay for reasonable estimated cost of capacity, and these, similar to the development impact fees, these are identified in the California Government Code, just a couple sections beyond. Instead of 16001, it's 16013 and Article 13C. And the report was then subsequently revised accordingly. There are some difference in implementation, compliance, and audit provisions that are unique to capacity charges that are different than development impact fees. But both still have to have a public hearing. There's notice requirements, and they both have to have accounting procedures done. As with development impact fees, costs can't exceed reasonable costs of providing services. So everything that we are looking at will be able to incorporate in there. So there's not really any changes into the fees. We just had to revise the report to show those reflections. So these were the proposed fee categories, and I just want to show everybody. So we looked at fire protection facilities, park and rec, general government and public facilities, circulation, transportation, parking, landfill, wastewater, and reclaimed water facility. Those last 2 are the capacity charges. The rest would be considered the development impact fee. At that workshop, there was discussion on particularly 2 points. One of these was the Parks and Rec facilities charge. There was discussion about that charge being potentially a little bit too high, and there was direction for staff to go back and to relook at this and see if there's any other way to calculate these fees and come up with a different figure. And that's what we did. And then to also look at the parking fund, because the parking fund, there's some unique situations here. So I've got 2 different potential stuff to talk about for that. I know this is really hard to see. The proposed diff and capacity charges, this is just kind of the broad vision of what it looks like. The facility categories range based off of single family, multifamily, then there's lodging, which is done on a per room instead of a per dwelling unit. And then the rest are kind of the commercial, industrial fees. So you've got retail and commercial, office and professional services, industrial, medical clinics, leisure, hospitality services, public institutions, and transportation, warehouse, and other utilities. And so in particular, what we were looking at were the Parks and Rec fees. These ranged anywhere from a high of $11,967 per dwelling unit for multifamily down to a low of about $1,600 for transportation, warehouse, utilities. So in the previous way that we looked at these charges, what we had originally done was we took a look at the current acreage of the city's parks and facility. current acreage of the city's park and rec facilities, and then we derived a specific level of service. And so at that time, we calculated at about 0.73 acres per 1,000 residents, visitors, and workers. That's one way to look at it, and then you can kind of break it down from there. The other way to look at it is to look at all of the proposed projects, their construction costs, their land acquisition costs, and add those up. And so that's what we did, and we've got 11 projects here. These projects are all aligned, again, with the capital improvement plan and with some of our other general plan and some of the other plan documents that we have. There's everything from the community center, swimming facility, dog park, the Avalon Skate Park, Joe Machado Field improvements, and there's some notes on there. So we added all of those up and we came out to about $36 million versus the $18 million if we were just looking at the charge for the level of service and land acquisition and development. And then what we looked at was multiplying that by 27%, which is the growth percentage of the total, which gave us a figure of about 9.7 million, just under 9.8 million. And then we multiply that or divide that by the service population growth, and what we end up is with a fee that is $35.57 versus the baseline fee of 67, or the fair share per capita cost of $67.23. So this actually has kind of a big impact. You can see in the column that's the second to the right, the alternate fee per unit, that's the new schedule, it's highlighted in bold, and the originally proposed fee per unit based off of the previous calculation. So this represents about a 53% reduction in the fees charged or potentially would be charged. There is a caveat, though, that while the fees are approximately lower, at 53% lower, the proposed fee would potentially result in a greater burden being placed on the city for future development costs and could result in reduced level of services if the city wasn't able to make those improvements happen. However, I will also put this out, the city may be able to leverage additional grant funds or land donations or other funding mechanisms to offset some of these burden costs. So it's not all dire, but I do want to paint the most complete picture.
And we want questions at the end?
I'm sorry?
And you prefer questions at the end of this presentation?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah, I'll just run through it really quick and then I can kind of go back. So on the Parks and Rec fees, the first two columns, the original Avalon's original proposed fees under the first report is the one, the dark blue, and I tried changing the color scheme. I know it's a little hard to read, but they go in the order in which they're listed to the right-hand side. So you can see where we were just under 10,000, and now the single-family park and rec fees would be just under 5,000 or just above 5,000 for single-family. For multifamily, you can see again the reduction in those fees, and then you can see how it's calculated across with other cities. So we've got Long Beach, Los Angeles, Oceanside, Newport, Pasadena, Glendale, Huntington Beach, and Seal Beach. I will caveat also this, some of these are not development impact fees. So for the city of Newport Beach and Glendale, these are actually Quimby Act fees. So Quimby Act authorizes basically cities to charge fees or require dedication of land for parks and recreation facilities. So when you look at Newport Beach, their Quimby fee or Quimby Act charge there is a in lieu fee basically of $26,000. So it kind of skews that. We can also look at this in terms of what other major cities have done. And so the University of California, Berkeley put together a report that looked at 6 cities, Los Angeles, Sacramento, Roseville, Oakland, Irvine, and Fremont, and they analyzed all of these fees and they put this together, and you can see Los Angeles is fairly low compared to Irvine and Fremont, which are kind of at the higher end. We're at about 10,000 and 5,000, and so you can kind of see where we would fall in on there. This was their slide. I wasn't able to put the cost comparison on ours next to it, so I do apologize, but I can go back and show you approximately where we are. So the revised diff and capacity charges, this really kind of just shows what the new totals would be. And you have this reduction in the total diff and capacity charges of anywhere between $800 to $5,600, but it's about a 53% reduction across the board from just the Parks and Rec, and then the total lowers it just a little bit on there, but hopefully a little bit more palpable. On the parking fund, what we did was we talked this over with our consultant, Dino. One of the considerations that we can do is if we were to eliminate the parking fund altogether, we can actually address this in the circulation fee. So the circulation fee is a little broad. It talks about improving mobility and circulation. It looks at increasing access for safe travel for all modes of transportation. So this is like bikes and walking, people who are walking, people are traveling on bike. So by improving facilities that increase active transportation, it actually potentially reduces the demand for parking. We can look at revisiting this in a year if we adopt them now and actually tie these to projects and potentially increase these circulation fees based off of those projects, because we'll have an active transportation plan that'll be finally fully developed. It's currently in development right now. Once those are identified and adopted, we can use those as kind of like the baseline and look at see where we can offset some of those costs. So just to give everybody an idea, these were the parking facility fees. They ranged anywhere from $2,300 to $17,000. So quite a chunk of change. Conversely, if I go to the circulation fee, these fees are much lower because the scope is a lot lower, and we're waiting for some of these projects to be identified. We have a few that are in there and that were calculated as part of that, but the active transportation plan and some of these other things would really spell that out, so we could increase or decrease this accordingly. And that's just kind of showing both of those highlighted. In terms of development impact fees, just cost comparison and where we fall overall, if we were to look at the original and where we're at proposed for single family and multifamily, you can see where we are in comparison to Long Beach and Huntington Beach. I included WRCOG, which is the Western Riverside Council of Governments, Coachella Valley, and San Bernardino County. WRCOG had commissioned a really recent report that was adopted in April of 2019. So these numbers were really fresh, and they had consolidated all of their fees for that region and kind of had a nice little comparison on there. So there's some caveats in here too. In these fees, Long Beach does not include off-site runoff mitigation fees. It's really hard to look at these diff and capacity charges as a whole because every community is unique. These fees are based off of specific projects. These fees are based off of different categories. Development fees are sometimes the fees that are adopted by a community are not as transparent, so you don't really know where those fees are. I think what we've outlined is very straightforward. They're tagged to different projects, and we've got all the calculations in there, and there's a very clear guideline on where these proposed fees would be. If you look at this in terms of additional comparisons for those 6 cities that the Berkeley Center put together, you can see there's these breakdowns. So you've got schools, parks, transportation, capital improvement, housing, fire, public safety, and environmental that are in those bottom lighter colors, and the planning and building, which are more service fees, those are on the top. So if you knock those blue and everything above the blue off, those are what we're looking at. So Los Angeles, again, is very low with their total fees versus ours, which are potentially anywhere from just under $40,000 for single family, or just above $30,000 if you want to look at the revised fees. So the recommendations really are, there's 3 different recommendations that are on the table. The first recommendation is to go back to the original report from the April 2nd with the changes in the language for the capacity fees, to look at approving those fees just as they are. The option 2 would be to look at the alternate Parks and Rec fee presented in this report, and then approve the remaining development impact fees and capacity charges with no other changes. The third option could be council could direct staff to say, you know what, we like the revised park fee. We don't want the parking fee, take that out, everything else is good, and then staff would go ahead and make those changes and then bring this forward and notice it and bring it forward for the July meeting. Or the last option is really to decide not to proceed forward anymore with the development impact fees, and we would shelve this study and we would have it at a future meeting.
What do you think about that, Richard? Option 3. So I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
On the parking fees. So if perchance somebody comes and the planning commission doesn't require parking, can we still do the parking thing because they are parking on our streets? Or is it only if they put in like park? What is that parking? Is it for?
So that parking fee was really to look at different strategies that council could leverage those fees for. So you could look at changing some of those two-way streets to one-way streets and providing additional parking on both sides. You could look at I don't know if you've been to some of those parking lots where they've got the technology where you drive up and then it lifts it up and then you can park another car or a cart underneath it. You could look at parking garages. There's a whole host of different strategies that you can tie that to.
Okay.
There are parking requirements already built into the normal application and plan review. So you can still address parking through those.
So you still have that fee no matter what.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because even though the planning commission may not require parking, by the expansion of a unit or building of a unit, there are parking impacts somewhere else.
Exactly.
So the fee is designed to create a fund for that.
Okay. And then I also had one on the Parks and Rec. So I think when we discussed these last time, there was a comment that any major land is typically not for sale, and then it also then would have some kind of a lease stipulation, whether it be $1 or whatever, or more or whatever. So then, but then the problem is, and I don't know, I'm just talking, that, and we find that we can't get grants if we don't own the land. So I think that's what we discussed at the last council meeting. So I don't know what I'm saying. I guess I'm saying if we know we're never going to be able to buy land, then those numbers could be reduced.
They absolutely could. My hesitation to do that is we have to base our calculations on the assumption that land acquisition has to be a factor in there.
Okay.
And so whether that's a reality or not, that land could be donated and that proportion might change.
Right.
We have an opportunity to revisit this every year. So if land does get donated, we can go back and we can say, you know what, some funding mechanisms have come in and we can review these proposed fees and then we can actually reduce those for, for subsequent years.
Okay.
But I think I would be hesitant to take that out only because,
I'm not saying out.
only because we have to operate under the assumption that we're starting from ground zero.
Exactly.
Well, we can also get a 50-year lease.
But they were saying the other day that no lease at all wasn't worth it, but.
Oh, she was saying a 50-year lease.
Oh, a 50-year lease. Oh, I see if we could get a 50. I'm sorry, you're correct. Okay. Well, council, any comments? Okay. Is there, we have option 1, 2, and 3. Is there some kind of motion on?
This has got to go to a public hearing.
Oh, shoot.
So
we're just
what
recommending.
you're giving direction so that, because once we publicly notice it, then that's what
You can't make
goes
any
out.
changes at that point.
Based off of your direction, we'll revise the report accordingly and then move forward with the public notice.
Okay.
Richard, what's your thoughts? This is definitely a
It's
baby.
been a couple of years,
Yeah, this
I
is
think
your
it's great
baby.
we're moving forward with this, finally getting it.
Do you have a recommendation on either one of those options?
I can like option 2, approve an alternate changes possibly down the line.
Because the alternate park and rec
Right.
reduced them from what to what?
If I pull that back up.
I'm sorry.
One more. Yep.
So the fees, the alternate fee schedule is in bold, and the original proposed fee is in italics on the right. So it's about a 53% reduction.
So the new one would be 3557 and not 5193.
Right.
Right. So the fee for like single family would be 5193 instead of
Versus-
9816.
Oh, 290, I'm sorry.
And then for multifamily, it would go from almost 12,000 down to 6,300.
Okay. Well, and then the other thing is we have the ability when a project comes forward to mess with these, or is it only if there's like an EDA? Okay. And only if there's a development agreement can we actually reduce those? Is that
Right.
correct? Okay. Okay. Rich, we're looking back at you. Did you prefer option 2 to reduce those rec fees a little bit?
I'm just glad it's going.
Well, no, but.
No, that was mine.
Okay, does anybody else, okay, he's saying option 2, does anybody else have a feeling? Okay. Option 2? Okay, so we're going to look towards option 2.
Is that, okay, so the option 2, they were actually in the discussion, there was the reducing the parks and recreation.
Yes.
Which you're giving direction to, and then the other one was the parking.
Right, parking. I just wanted to know what, I know there was some concern last time because parking was high, or, so there was, what we can do is we can either we can keep it as is, or we can eliminate the parking and incorporate some of the language that parking had into circulation and address some of the parking fee through circulation, only as it pertains to the strategies that promote walking and biking and reduce the need for vehicles, essentially.
Can you go back to the parking slide,
That
please?
sounds kind of good.
So for,
This was
like
the-
lodging per room would be.
This is what you're proposing now.
This is the fee as proposed, correct?
Non-residential, yeah.
One is the residential, which we had previously.
Oh, right.
What we did is add.
If you want to come to the mic, we'd appreciate that, thank you.
This is actually the schedule, so you've got 4752 for the single family.
Thanks, Michael. You couldn't have done it any better than I did. It was a very, very good discussion. But at the last workshop we had, which was actually a public hearing that became a workshop, the concern was that the parking fee was only going to be charged to residential, with the idea that the non-residential would have parking required as part of the development plan. But as you know, the Planning Commission could back off of that and not require parking. So the concern was, well, that they do generate parking needs. So,
Right.
So what we did is went back and added fees for the non-residential based on employees and the visitor parking projections of how many parking spaces would be required by those. So so what we're showing here for the parking that's highlighted in circles, goes from $17,000 per 1,000 square feet down to, for commercial, retail and commercial, to $3,100 for transportation and warehouse. So the residential component was the same, that 4752 was what we had last time.
Well, those numbers seem high to me, but what do I know?
Yeah, and if there's concern that it's too high, what we can do is we can move forward but eliminate that. And then we've already added language into the revised report that talks about parking in circulation. And so that was kind of the proposal. Leave circulation alone. We can revisit this again when we do the annual review. And once we have the active transportation plan adopted and projects identified, those that align with parking reductions and promote active transportation, then we can go in there, add in those projects, and then increase those fees accordingly if needed.
Okay, because if we approved everything and then somebody showed up tomorrow, which is impossible, but we have something to fall back on.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, what he said.
Okay, so you want to, we'll take out the parking fees and go toward a more circulation fee.
Right.
Okay.
Is that okay with the rest? Okay, all right.
That's
Thank you.
direction. But leave
Yeah.
the circulation fee the way it is now without.
With the language on parking.
Okay, all right.
Okay, you got that?
Kind of going
Well, thank you very much.
well.
Okay, it's only 8 o'clock. We're doing good. I know. That was nice. All righty, let's start together.
Yeah, if we could just have for the record, just so we're clear, as we go to the public hearing, if we could have a motion for adoption of the option number 2 recommendation with the further elimination of the parking fee and replacement by the circulation fee.
So moved.
Second. Oh. Okay. Call for the vote. Uh-huh.
All ayes.
Okay.
And we are at item 10. The final item for this evening.
Item 10 is filling the vacant seat on the City Council. Just for a quick little overview, we started this discussion on June 4th at the City Council meeting, and City staff was directed to advertise for this position, but either for somebody to turn in a letter of intent, candidate statement, etc. We did place it, I wanted, just so the public knows, we did public notices on the city website and within the city online newsletter at City Hall, and it was published in the June 7th Catalina Islander. This is alphabetically. We did receive 6 letters of interest or candidate statement, and that was from Stephen Haves, Carl Johnson, Bryce Knoll, Micah Phillips, Joseph Sampson, and Timothy Winslow. And I just wanted to further say a few more things.
Please.
Mayor, is there was a email that was forwarded to me by a concerned citizen, and it was some numbers that they had input in on the Register Recorder's City Clerk's website, and those numbers came for a special election, or I should say for an election, around $15,000 to $17,000. And so my estimate on a standalone, I want to make sure everyone understands that I set a $50,000 estimate for a standalone election. So that's not consolidating with the county, because the county could not give us any numbers at all, and only because so many cities are consolidating that they're unsure what the impact it is going to be on their departments and hiring of extra personnel. So they were very careful about coming back to us within 24 hours and stating that they're not ready to give any numbers out to cities, to use an estimate of what you paid for your last election and add 20%. So that's where I came up with my number, and mine was strictly for a standalone, not consolidating. I did provide to City Council a memo today with some other elections costs so in 2014, when we had our municipal election, we paid $27,000, a little over that. In 2016, we paid $35,568. We did have a special municipal election for Measure X, which was our cannabis one, and that was a consolidated one. And that was, I believe, when was the presidential one? 2016. And that was almost $24,000, and then last year's in April was a little over $50,000. Some of the costs that we noticed were missing from the LA County Register recorders, that there were certain things where we go back and forth with the county for voter verification and for addresses, like when each of the candidates turns in their nomination papers, you had to get so many signatures. Those have to go back and forth. Signature verification on all ballots that get turned in by the mail, like your permanent vote by mails. And any of the provisional voters at the precincts that get turned in, and the timeline from that election, so that the Measure X was at November 3rd or November 5th. We didn't get a final count and the certification from the county until a whole month later. So these are just facts that I want to present to the City Council. And in the packet this evening, I do have 3 different resolutions. One of them, if you were to determine who you were going to appoint tonight. The other ones were calling the election, a special election in November. And the third resolution is asking for those services from the county. So I'll let you take it from there.
Okay, so I have one question, maybe two, and because I just got this. When there were appointments made to unexpired terms, do you have an idea how long they were? Like this one was, and it's funny, Pam Albert's name's in this.
Thank you. So I forgot to mention that. So Michael Ponce, I believe at the last council meeting, mentioned a few elections where people where we had to appoint a vacancy, and one was in 2000. And that's when we appointed, Gary Brown had to resign from his midterm seat, and we appointed Dan O'Connor, and that was just a strict appointment and went to the next highest vote getter at the election. And then in October of 2001, Mr. White had to resign because of some health issues, and he was a midterm vacancy also. And he submitted a letter to the council recommending Marie Whittington.
Right.
And the council took consideration and they appointed Marie Whittington.
Okay, so when Dan was appointed, Mayor Smith stated the city just had an election. The appointment would be for 2 years. So, okay. And then Marie's was probably however long. Okay, but for that one, for example, was 2 years. Okay. Thank you for all the background information. I guess I should start it. I just want to thank the 6 of you that have, and I wish you were all sitting in the front row. It'd be easier because plus my eyesight is bad. But anyway, and I can't even, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, even Chuck Martin in the back? You wait. Is that Chuck Martin? Oh, Tim, I see you. Chuck was making the way to Tim. Thank you. I couldn't see your face. And Joe is the only one that doesn't appear to be here. I want to thank you all. I know to put your name out here and put your face out here is rather difficult. And as you know, we have a very difficult item before us, and I'm sure none of us have been sleeping very well for the last 2 weeks. So basically what we have before it, my first question is to the council, because it seemed as though there was some kind of consensus at the last meeting that we did not want to burden the taxpayer with a special election. So my first question is, if we don't have to take it to a formal vote, I'm wondering if that is still the consensus of the council.
Yeah.
No special election, Cindy?
I don't want to spend the money for this short period of time. It's just a person will be, I mean, if we don't, then it's,
right.
I mean, it's a lot of money, and it's, I mean, I've weighed out thousands of, different options and comments and all of that, but looking at the fee is going to be a significant fee. It's not, if it were, even $10,000, I think we could all raise that and not have it be
Right.
taxpayers' money, but,
Right.
I also said that, if it got so ugly at the council level, that would be the solution. That's the easy way out, let me say that. The easy way out is to spend taxpayers' dollars, no matter what it costs, up to $50,000, go out to do an election. That gets all four of us off the hook.
Right.
But that just doesn't,
Okay.
no decision feels
Okay.
good. Honestly, it's just
Right.
tough.
And Richard, are you in favor of having a special election?
Well, that's too expensive.
Okay, and I don't agree. So I think we're in consensus that we don't want to have a special election. So then we've got a couple ways to go. We can pull off of this list. And everybody would be fine. Some have more experience than others. I'm gonna go forward and do something maybe unexpected, but I just know that I have gotten concerns and until there is a real election, I think where the people can come out and speak again. I mean, I do agree that people spoke, and there's validity in that, and I know Cindy speaks to that specifically. But I know that not of all my constituents that the last top vote getter is the best person for the job, and being quite honest. So. What I have found out in the last year and a half or 2 years, that there's been one person that has been coming to all the meetings, been very active in all from the Community Advisory Committee with the Sheriff's Department to the Planning Commission meetings and to all of the council meetings. And I really respect that person for doing that and taking that initiative, and probably at this point might be more aware of what's going on than anybody based on his attendance and his participation. So just to get the ball rolling, I would like to fill the vacancy with Carl Johnson. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. If there's discussion, if you want further discussion, fine. If there's no further discussion, let's call for the vote.
Well, you have to.
Well, I think we have to.
I know, I just said that. Where are they?
Well, they're in line, but also there's council members too.
Okay.
I mean, sorry, I didn't mean that way. I'm sorry, I did not mean it that way.
As quickly as possible.
I will say, to just put out there for those in the audience to think about that, I have talked to more people about this topic than I have any other topic in my 5 years. So no matter what decision we make tonight, there's a group that's going to be upset. There's a group that's going to be happy, and there's a group that's going to be indifferent. So no matter what we do, it is what it is. That is actually the case with every single council vote and every single difficult topic. So I just want to put that out there as people are thinking about it, that I can assure you that 50% of you, if not more in this room, didn't even vote for me, nor were you supportive of me in the election. And maybe times have changed, and maybe thoughts have changed, and maybe I have won some voters, and maybe I've lost some voters, but there is no decision that we're going to make that's going to be that everybody's going to be happy with. And and I just, I want that to be in everybody's mind, that it is, until you actually sit in this seat, you have no idea how hard it is to sit and talk to even your friends and hear the things that they want to say and to speak their concerns. So that being said, I also feel very strongly that while I would agree with your sentiments that Mr. Johnson has been here for every single council meeting in at least 3 years, I think. We served together on another board, and I actually very much enjoy conversing with him, as well as others that are on the list for sure. I feel that a person that sits in this seat needs to go through the harshness of an election, needs to go through answering to the public, and that's, I just feel that we don't always, maybe we don't always get the person that we want elected, but it happens through that process. And so
I understand.
that's why I would not be able to favorably vote, not for any other reason other than I really feel that it would be, you got to go through the process of getting kicked in the teeth and getting out there.
I understand your sentiments totally.
And I concur with Cindy.
Okay. Well, on this one nomination, do you have a comment on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yolanda Montano. I have seen Carl here, and he is dedicated. I see that, so I have nothing against Carl whatsoever. However, I believe in democracy, and I believe that the people have spoken within 8 votes. We have 15 more. Okay, 16 votes. Excuse me. I stand corrected. However, this is a democracy, and you guys have big burdens on your shoulders. This doesn't have to be a burden on you, because the people have spoken. Regardless of who it is, I'm taking the name out of the equation here. It's numbers, and 15 more meetings we have, and then the election process starts. Okay? That is what the community needs, is a democracy and fairness. And do what's right and get it off your... don't let the burden be on you. The people have spoken. It's not difficult. Why are we making it difficult? It's a democracy.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment. Is there any other comments? We will just call for the vote on this one.
Are we speaking only to the nomination? Or
I think
thoughts
we
in
should
general?
I think we should speak to this, because if this doesn't go anywhere, we have another step.
So we're only speaking about the nomination of Carl Johnson?
Yes. Right now.
Okay.
Okay. It'll make it simpler, I think, if we do this kind of
I'm down.
methodically. Okay. I think, okay. So there's a motion and a second for Carl Johnson to fill the vacant seat. Let's call for the vote.
2 noes, Mayor Marshall, Councilmember Hernandez. I'm
Two
sorry,
ayes.
2 ayes, Mayor
Backwards.
Marshall, Councilmember Hernandez, 2 noes, Councilmember Casti, Councilmember Olson.
Okay. And I would like to say, I don't believe based on what I'm hearing from the 2 council people on either end, that whether it be Tim Winslow, Joe Sampson, Micah Phillips, Bryce Noel, or Bryce Noel, well, I don't feel like we should, unless you all want to go through one at a time and see, but based on the way you're saying it, will always be deadlocked and they will never pass. So I think right now we're down to the appointment of Stevie Hayes based on the numbers, and we say we don't want a special election. If there's other options out there, folks, let me know. I mean, is that pretty simple?
And just for confirmation, because my head is spinning, we cannot leave the seat vacant until the next election, correct?
Well, what happens is if you don't make an action by July 18th, if you don't appoint or you don't call a special election, then you subject yourself to a writ action, which means someone would sue the city to force a decision.
Oh, right, okay, got it.
Could sue the city, not would. Sorry.
Right. Okay. So,
I'll move to appoint Steve for the balance of the term.
which would be till March? Is
Next election.
Is there a second?
I would agree to that with the wording changed on the motion, because for me, as I've said all along, it is not the person, it is the fact of taking the next highest vote getter in the last election.
I will amend the motion to reflect, appoint the next highest vote getter from the last election.
Okay.
Fulfill the term for 2 years.
Okay. Is there public comment?
That's not a good sign.
Art Glass, 45 Camino, or Gaviota. I agree with a lot with what Yoli's saying here. I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel. The people have spoken. 16 votes isn't even 1% of the electorate here. I think otherwise it's all politics. It has nothing to do with These other people that are all very nice people that did not run, I think they should have to run to even think of filling the seat. Myself, I have nothing against any of them, but I think you have to take the next highest vote getter.
Right.
I mean, it seems like a no-brainer to me,
Okay.
and it's fair.
Yeah, thank you. Comments? Polly?
Yeah.
Paula Patterson, 221 Whitley. My one concern is that because there are large items that come to the City Council, that 2 of our council members must recuse themselves, and that would mean that there will be 3 of you here when some of those votes happen for our major stakeholder here. And that concerns me because even though I approached our city attorney regarding having the possible appointment of Steve Haves to the council, that he does not have to recuse himself. But here in the city of Avalon, I don't care if you're a business or if you're a renter or anything else, it's really hard to vote against your landlord. And so that's my big concern, because I want, and I think you all as a council do a really good job voting in the best interest of the city, of the people of the city of Avalon. And that's what I'm concerned about. So I just see that kind of imbalance potential, and we didn't have a chance to talk about that today. So that really is my largest concern. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
Could I speak to that?
Yes.
I did get a little bit of that, Paula, when we talked today. So I would unfortunately like to put city staff on the spot real quick. Amanda, this is really for you. Do we have anything in the pipeline right now that could even be a major impactful decision with the major stakeholder?
Between now and March.
Between now and
The end of the year.
Yeah.
I have not received anything from the company that would indicate they are going forward with a large project between now and the end of the year. There are meetings that take place between the city manager and senior staff at the Island Company, and they may have more frank conversations as to what their short-term plans are. But as far as, is there an application on the books that's pending? No, I don't.
Okay, so I think, and Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, the last item before the city council specifically that I remember us having to recuse ourselves for was something about the sign for the Atwater.
I think that was, the awning.
And I believe everything else goes through the planning commission. Is that, I mean, those major, the decisions with this particular stakeholder go through the planning commission.
My memory is not as good as I would like it, but I do also remember an instance that came to the city council regarding the property at Las Casitas for 180 units to be developed there, and I don't remember how that came down, but it was something that, they were, thinking about they had it sort of in place. I mean, that's the kind of thing. It's a major kind of development change that could happen here in a heartbeat. And so that's what, I mean, not a heartbeat, but it takes a lot. But do you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just a direction. Just because they don't have anything here now doesn't mean they're not biting at the bullet to do it. And now that we have the water restrictions have lessened, and we don't have to, that's not an issue, it gives me cause for concern, because I just don't want to see us go way into a direction that we kind of have been able to assess and reevaluate on a slower pace.
Right.
And I hear that, and that's what I'm speaking to. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That's what I'm speaking to, and I did ask that. I wanted to know that particular question about a major development project. I don't get to vote on it, so I don't get to have a say on it. But even if they walked into City Hall tomorrow and started conversations on moving forward on such a massive project, project, it would be long after the March election before it would ever come before. And that is part of the decision weighing in, that of not wanting to spend how much money on an election and take, hundreds of hours of staff's time to turn around the next day and start for the next election.
Well,
so I mean, I hear your concern.
Absolutely, and don't think, I'm just wait and see. That's all I have to say. And if it comes to pass, I'll be the first one here at the podium to say this is what I'm talking about, because I worry about it. We would like to say, but Avalon is an anomaly for all the rules as they stand regarding conflict of interest. It's a different kind of place here. It doesn't really work the same, so.
Well, perceived as a conflict of interest, and I do believe that we've also, some people, if you feel there's a, what is that, if you feel there's a...
So let's just, a primer on conflict of interest. There's the economic conflict of interest. Paying rent to a landlord does not constitute a disqualifying economic conflict of interest unless it involves your actual property that you lease. So if in other words, if a project comes and it's a property that a candidate owns or leases, yes, that's a conflict. The only exception would be that because the Island Company is your landlord, that if they had something come before the council that you felt that you could not objectively determine that matter because you have bias, because you don't want to upset your landlord, or you feel that there is an appearance of impropriety. Those two matters are up to each individual to determine. It's not a steadfast rule. Also, just if there would be a major project, what I would anticipate is since we already have a development agreement, we already have an agreement with the Island Company that says if anything comes up, they're going to pay the City of Seas. The next step would be, if it's a major development, it's an EIR. And EIRs, especially if it's a large development, usually take a year or 2 years. So you're safe on I would think you're years off for a major development, given the fact that it's going to take an EIR, not a mitigated negative deck.
Okay, I understand. Is that Steve in the back of the room?
Hi, Steve.
Just nice to see you. I'm sorry. Very nice to see you.
I just wanted to, on Paula's comment, those major developments do come. I've been on the Planning Commission for 6 years now, and living in a small town, you are going to have conflict, and you just need to know when you need to excuse yourself. It's financial conflict. If the Island Company is paying Mr. Have's money, then that is a financial conflict. Now, it's up to us as individuals, like Scott said, to know if there's an appearance of a conflict. However, we've had many projects come in front of us, and there's been many of us who've had conflicts. The Vons, it'll go to City Council if it's denied and they appeal it to the City Council. That's when it is seen at City Council level. There was major conflict at that time. There was no quorum. We drew straws. That's how that is handled. It hasn't never been done. We're all going to have conflicts. We all have to give fair hearings, no matter who they are and how high of stakeholders they are, period. And that is our job, to represent the city and our residents.
Thank you. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further comments? Okay.
And then just for the motion, even though it's worded the way it is, that would result in Mr. Hayes being elected. Being appointed, I'm sorry. I just have to say that for elections law.
And if we don't appoint today and we worry about that writ, we have to have a special election. That's what you're saying.
Well, no. If you don't appoint today, and you don't call a special election, then the issue is you're waiting for a lawsuit to force you to act.
Okay. All righty. Well,
we have to.
Let's call for the vote.
3 ayes, Mayor Marshall, Councilmember Cassidy, Councilmember Olson, 1 no, Councilmember Hernandez.
If there's no further business, meeting's adjourned.
Good night, Tony.
Thank you, ma'am.